sure y'all probably gone, but I'm gonna speak into your way. Let me see, Crystal. Naturally in New Orleans. Hey y'all, come on in, come on back. I'm gonna get this set up. Let me get me some water. Come on. Come on in, let's get caught up on your president. Come on, come on. ladies and gentlemen. So listen, I'm trying to get ahead and come on instead of being on all night, every night. Hey, Crystal. Hey, Janet. So I'm going to jump on into what's going on with Trump and the world and the economy and the war and all of this type of stuff. I think until something new come out about Carmelo Anthony, I'm going to pause for a minute. I don't want to be on repeat with that and keep repeating the same stuff over and over. Yeah, no. I did see something where Book put out the new trial. Let me see if I send it to myself. Yeah, I'll go over what Book put out and shout out to him. Yeah, I need to hear something really, really new moving forward and not so much opinion and so much on repeat. You know, let us get some new information on, you know, what's going on with the trash can man. Hi, Inez. So let me start here with old boy. Some I saw earlier. Let's go.
Watermelon felons. The 6-foot cross burning in Chicago, and Fox News tells all the black people that they're responsible for the race war that they have been trying to get out of.
We're responsible.
Years, the same race war that the Metcalfs have been dragging them back into. You can't tell that the Metcalfs are racist. You're so weird. When we're talking about Carmelo Anthony, we are literally talking about the lack of consistency laid out in the punishments, right, by this racist ass court system that has always been used to kill black people. So if you don't know what we're talking about, shut the fuck up, right? We're talking about the foundations of America and the fact that white people, going back for hundreds of years, have sold the guns that they have used to kill black people, right, for hundreds of thousands of dollars because they're living out the racist fantasies of the masses, right? And so white supremacy is back in, and it's still everyone else who's the problem. So let's talk about
America
all the
great
white people
again.
who got away with everything.
Hope he enjoyed his first night in that cell last night.
George Zimmerman was acquitted of all charges. Daniel Penny, Kyle Rittenhouse, what now, right? There was Craig Tamborn. He's a white supremacist, fatally stabbed someone to death. He got 3 months in jail. What now? What now? What else can I tell you? Timothy Hudson essayed his sister and then killed her, and he gets to stay with a family member until the trial. What are you going to say to that, right?
Right.
Cops only get 10 years for killing black people. What are you going to say to that? The exact same scenario. Casey Allison, right? Fatally stabbed someone in his high school. He premeditated it because he stabbed him a bunch. Carmelo Anthony stabbed once and retreated. That's how you know it's not premeditated. Casey got 10 years. So what are you going to say now?
He didn't get 10 years for that. He got 2.
Right, anonymous millionaires.
He had additional charges
They removed 3 black people off the jury. That's what the prosecution did, right? And so they tried him as an adult, which was also incredibly rare. The judges MAGA, and they sent him to prison the very next day. That never happens. Okay, now let's get to the witnesses. Whole school did not have a tent. Austin invited him into the tent. Like, that is in the fucking trial. So we knew it's a setup, but he made a huge mistake, right? He pulled out his multi-tool that night, came out, and he, like any fucking teenager, he made a huge mistake, right? But the point is, if he was white, he wouldn't have got premeditated murder. Black kids don't get to make mistakes, right? They don't even get to have childhoods, right? Apparently, he's already in fucking prison. The point is that, you know, if it was a white person, he would have been celebrated online that night, would have went to auction. And now we just got all these celebrities that act like they're our allies, and they're just completely silent while they're just like...
Not the auctions.
You people hang your hat on the dumbest shit I've ever seen.
Black kids get treated like criminals at any age, and they're made examples out of this. Your takeaway from the national debate, you're not getting drawn into the Fox News race war that they need to relive in their MAGA base. Those are Nazis, right? The point is that these kids don't get childhoods. They don't get slow motion head starts or suburbs. The Child family treated Cyrus Carmack Belton like he was a fucking goddamn terrorist.
Thank you, Janet.
Okay, and so Carmelo Anthony, it's the same shit, right? The court system is designed to keep people that look like me entitled in your comments. We don't know our history, right? That's because of the court system. And it keeps everyone that looks like them behind bars. But maybe people that look like me will learn we could have safer days if they're just a little less racist. Right? The Metcalfs. Jesus Christ. Have a good day.
Watermelon fellas.
Wow.
6-foot cross burning in Chicago, and Fox News tells all the black
Did he not hit it on the dot?
Trying to get out of.
Did he not hit it on the dot? You only know your history. Oh, yeah, here it is. Did I send that? Did I send something to myself? Yeah, we know Jay got put out. Let me see. So the Carmelo Anthony appeal case on 5/26 0000840 dash CR dash docket statement filed. Post conviction motion for new trial being filed July the 9th, 2026. Shout out to Book. Hey, Be Rich. Shout out to Book. Hold on, let me allow y'all to see. Shout out to Book. Now, you may have to pull it a little closer so that y'all can have a better look. But it says new trial being filed July the 9th, 2026. So it's in the works. So that's why it's like, do we need to limit all the stuff that's being repeated? And I say that because a lot of times factual stuff gets lost in a bunch of hearsay or opinions. So y'all know I'm not big on that. I hold on to what I know is facts. And so that's why I don't need to talk about it all the time, all day, because of people's opinion get crossed up in the I don't want to call it fire, but it just get crossed up, and I don't want to fool with that. So shout out to Book for bringing us something that had not been highly discussed. He's a paralegal. So, what do he have highlighted down here? So I'm gonna go with this because I know how he works and how he operates. Okay, so down here in the red, let me make that bigger. Make sure y'all can see it. Motion for the new trial. So here's that motion. But I hope it gets approved. And I know some people saying that, he take a chance on getting more than the 35 years. Yeah, but with this new council, with his new winning dream team, I think that what needed to be presented that wasn't will be presented. Some of the witnesses will be better cross-examined. And I think the research will be different, and I do believe he'll have a better chance than what to get either the sudden passion. Wish he could just get off like the rest of the kids get off. The only reason why Allison got 10 years. At first, he got 2 in Belton, Texas. He got 2 years, and it was premeditated, and they had already fought and stuck, and guns had been pulled before. So it was totally different circumstance. And they rejected murder, they rejected manslaughter, and they gave him negligence, homicide. But because he had guns prior, he had some amendments or some more time added for his past crimes. I can't think of the word. I always forget that word. I forget it when it come down to Hernandez-Govan. If he would have got found guilty on any of that he was charged with Dolph, they was going to add more years that would have made him eligible for the death penalty. So let's just keep that honest and true. So July the 9th. Okay, so let's move on. Again, I want to say thank you to Book when it comes to that paralegal stuff, he is very accountable, uh, trustworthy for that. A lot of times people don't want to give him his full credit, but I don't have a problem. So thank you, book. I greatly appreciate it. And here go another case. I don't know where it was. A 19-year-old David Pleasant murdered unarmed by these two cowards. One of them walked free. The other one, I got 4 years. It's just, another one of, folk ain't safe in the white man's world. They get off, walked free, and the other one received 4 years. He was unarmed and running away from confrontation when he was unalived by Alex and Mason. There's just no way they can make it make sense. So I don't expect for them to try. Okay, so let's move on over to what's going on. He been hit with all type of loss today. Let's be clear. He took L after L. He is the swamp. When he lied and told people he's going to drain the swamp, he is the swamp. Make no mistake about it. Donald Trump is the swamp. He was told for the umpteenth time that he has to pay E. Carroll. We not going to pay that for you. We not going to let you out of it. You played in that woman's coochie. In her boochie. In her pants. You took her cookie. And she didn't want you to give it. She didn't want you to have it. Use the cookie monster. And so every time you turn around, you trying to appeal that while you stealing. So you already stealing. Pay that woman her $82 million. You thought you when you said you're not my type. She your something. She $82 million worth of something. Shit, you should have cloned that cookie. I'm gonna say that something else. Shit, that was some $82 million cookies, and they keep telling your ass that you gonna pay that money. You stealing anyway. You might as well pay her. Woo. Keep your hands, keep your tongue, keep your pickle to yourself. She didn't give you consent. I was so happy to see all them Trumps he has to pay. Oh yeah, he got his ass served to him today. He got it served, baby, and not taxpayers. Absolutely, you finna pay for that. Hold on, y'all. Let me fix something right quick. He finna pay for that. You gonna keep your hands to yourself. You gonna keep your hands, your tongue, and your pickle to yourself, baby. You can't make nobody want that thing. And we know you took it because you done took kids' cookies. You done took boys. You just taking everybody's cookies. And how dare you want to send black people talking about, like, we the high in crime. Now, do you and your elite, you and your secret society, y'all all perverts. Let's hear this.
Loss for Trump here at the Supreme Court, and a big loss for Trump here at the Supreme Court, and a big win for voters and for democracy.
Yes.
The court in a 5-4 ruling determined that states, including Mississippi, can accept mail-in ballots even if they arrive a few days after Election Day is over. It is a states' rights issue, according to the Supreme Court.
Not
you
yours.
can tell it stung Trump, based on what he said at the White House moments later.
What do you make of the Supreme Court ruling today in regards to the mail-in ballots, and what comes next for the SAFE Act after the state's ruling?
Well, because of the mail-in ballot ruling, which was a little bit surprising, gives people more time to vote illegally, let's say. But the SAFE Act is even more important, and that's the right you have to be a citizen of our country Okay, you have to show you're a citizen of our country, called citizenship. Voter ID by photo voter ID, and no mail-in ballots unless you're in the military, disabled, you're ill, or you're away. Easy. And we'll have honest elections. The ruling.
Not just for the 30 states in D.C.
Ooh, thank you, baby.
Not just for the 30 states in D.C.
Ooh, thank you, baby. Yeah, let me move back.
Military and overseas ballots.
I'm sorry.
They were legally cast. It's really
Let me back up.
States get to regulate how elections.
That kicked me out bad. Hold on, y'all. Hold on.
Elections Clause, Article 1, Section 4. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Something happened and it kicked me all the way out. So, baby, thank you. I see it. Let me go back. I don't know when he sound all sad that he didn't get his way. Oh my God. Yeah, you look sad too. And you look sad. Good for you. Oh my goodness. Hold on. Okay, now it's fixed. Look at him. Looking. Ooh, can I say dumb? Let's start all the way over. Let's go. Let's go. 5-4 ruling.
Proceed. The court, in a 5-4 ruling, determined that states, including Mississippi, could accept mail-in ballots even if they arrive a few days after Election Day is over.
Look at the swamp.
It is
Monster.
a states' rights issue, according to the Supreme Court. And you could tell it stung Trump based on what he said at the White House moments later.
What do you make of the Supreme Court ruling today
The swap
in regards
monster.
to the mail-in ballots, and what comes next for the SAVE Act after today's ruling?
Well, because of the mail-in ballot ruling, which was a little bit surprising, gives people more time to vote illegally, let's say. But the SAVE Act is even more important, and that's the right. You have to be a citizen of our country. Okay, you have to show you're a citizen of our country, called citizenship. Voter ID by photo voter ID, and no mail-in ballots unless you're in the military, disabled.
With Kalshi, you can make predictions on anything, right from the palm of your hand.
Sounds great.
Please.
But only goal.
You're ill or you're away or even on a vacation. We're being very open about it. It's pretty easy. And we'll have honest elections. But the ruling, which a lot of people were waiting for, that was a ruling that was, I think it was very detrimental to honest elections.
And Putin can't cheat
But
for
it is
you.
what it is. Basically, they're keeping it a little bit the way it is now.
This really undermines Trump's claim that states can't be trusted to administer elections. Of course, states have administered elections from the founding of the country. It's in the Constitution. And David Becker, former Department of Justice official who served in administrations of both parties, an election security expert, says, here's the significance of what the court has done.
It's a complete victory for the states, not just the 14 states in D.C. that choose, for whatever reason, because the mail takes longer there, to accept ballots that are delivered by the
Your
post
birthday
office
tomorrow,
sometime
right?
after Election Day, so long as they were legally voted.
Or is it today?
Not just for the 30 states in D.C. that allow the post office to deliver military and overseas ballots after Election Day if they were legally cast. It's really a victory for all the states, a complete victory.
Thank
in the
you,
sense
Lord.
that
I
the states
thought
get
it
to
was. I
regulate
thought it
how
was gonna be
elections are run.
tomorrow. So that's why today I didn't say happy birthday. I thought she just happy birthday to you, room shaker. Happy birthday to you, room shaker. Happy what? Oh, shake your thing, shake your thing, shake, shake, shake your thing. Happy birthday to the shaker. Yeah, I thought that you was just, you know, how you claim the whole week and the whole month. So happy birthday. Excuse me. Let's go.
Our country. That's by design of the founders under the Elections Clause, Article 1, Section 4. And this 5-4 opinion written by Justice Barrett really embraces that, acknowledges a few key points. One, that a vote is cast when it's completed by the voter. That election day means that all of the votes have to be cast and completed by the voter then, but that doesn't create some extra constitutional or extra legal requirement that the Postal Service has to have diligently delivered them by then, especially given the troubles the Postal Service has right now. It clearly set out that, the states that at least have Mississippi's deadline, which is 5 days after the election. There might be some ambiguity if it goes longer than that. States like Washington and California have just slightly longer deadlines. But I think those states are probably okay. What I also would probably guess is those states are probably going to move their deadlines to the 5-day clear, bright line limit. One other point I'd probably make,
He
Scott,
know
I
he
think
done
it's really
lost
important.
this.
This doesn't say that the states that
The Republicans, the
require ballots
GOP done
by
lost,
election day are doing it wrong, or
and it's his fault.
vice versa. What it says is the states get to make this call. Mail delivery is different in different parts of the country. Of mail voting.
While y'all out there
And what
trying
the Supreme
to
Court
start a
recognized
race
as the founders
riot.
did 250 years ago, the state's the right place to make that decision.
And again, Trump was dunking on that bipartisan housing affordability law, saying elections, the SAVE Act, to federalize restrictions on voting, should be the priority of this Congress.
What are your plans for the housing bill, Mr. President?
I don't know. I think it's so unimportant by compared to the Save America Act. I think the Save America Act is exactly what it says. It's saving America from crooked elections. And the housing
What
bill
about a
is
crooked
bill
president?
that can get approved. They worked on it long and hard.
What about a crooked president?
It's very bipartisan.
What
That
about
means
a
the Democrats
crooked
like it. I
society?
think it's maybe even it's probably maybe more that way they're getting things that I wouldn't necessarily agree to. Nobody knows more than housing in the history of the presidency. Nobody did well like me in housing. I made a lot of money. I made a lot of money with housing.
You made a lot of money
When I
stealing
look
too.
at that bill, it's a bill. But when I look at the Save America Act, it's about saving America. And I'd like to have the Save America Act added, and that's probably not going to happen.
So
Because we have 4 Republican senators, maybe 5, that just won't vote for it. It's crazy. Somebody like Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. Nobody's done more for Alaska than me. She's Trump deranged. What can I tell you?
What's really important to underscore is that a slow count of the vote is an accurate count of the vote, perhaps a more accurate count of the vote. That there is no vice in taking time to tabulate votes or accept votes. Mail-in voting widens the pool of people who can vote. There's more from David Becker.
We're seeing this in elections every single day. These primaries are seeing record turnout. The election officials in the states and at the local and county levels are under more pressure than ever. They're being attacked by the president and supporters of the president. We saw that in California earlier this month. And yet for all that bluster, California's
Being
elections
attacked
run really well.
because of voting.
And we know who won. They counted every valid ballot. There's no evidence of fraud whatsoever. We have clear winners who will advance to the general election
But
in November.
Elon Musk is
And
being
so
questioned about his
I
fraud
do this based
during
on
the election.
experience, based on how well the election officials have been meeting their moment every single time. 2020 in the middle of COVID, managing the highest turnout in American history.
Right.
2024 with rampant disinformation running through the election
I'm
system.
good, Preston.
And now
Thank
in
you.
2026 in the primaries,
I
we're
hope
going to
all
hold
is
some
well with
primaries
you.
tomorrow. We're going to see as well. They're all running smoothly. It's again, and Scott, you and I have talked about this many times. The public servants who run elections all over this country just do a remarkable job. They are under more pressure than ever. They need our support. People should volunteer to be poll workers, but
Yeah, volunteer.
We're all getting older. At some
Shit, I
point,
need to
we may
volunteer. I need to
little
be there
help.
with
That's why
a very
Jitterbug is
watchful eye. Be like, back up
I
out
have
there.
every confidence, despite all this is happening and all the noise that the administration is trying to create, it's ultimately going to fail.
Another big ruling here. The Supreme Court determines that Trump cannot continue his effort to fire Lisa Cook, the governor of the Federal Reserve
Awesome.
Board, who Trump has had a target on for months now.
He got
Liz Oyer
handed
is the
L
Department
after
of Justice
L.
official who was fired by the Trump administration and says all of these firings, all of this leverage Trump and the Department of Justice use against critics of the president or other civil servants has a chilling effect all across the government. Always felt to me like the Lisa Cook matter was a proxy over a bigger issue, that they're trying to send a message with these firings. When you were fired,
They're trying to send a message with these firings. They also trying to send a message with Carlo Anthony with this 35 years for defending himself. They don't want us to be able to stand our ground against white people. It's a lot of hypocrisy going on. All the people that's been laid off and fired on these jobs need to be able to get their jobs back. Fuck you mean? All these people that done lost their snaps and food, and we complain about lazy people getting assistance, but hell, now we knowing that we are funding a genocidal fake country, Israel. It ain't even, it's not even on the map. And we've been funding these terrorists, murderers, and illers, putting billions in their pocket. We can't even get free medical. You know, we can't get discounts on stuff because we funding a whole terrorist make-believe ass country. Give it all back.
A chilling message it felt through the Department of Justice to have people be subservient to the president. How do you read that? Is the firing of a Trump critic?
Yeah, I'd rather fund the lazy in the U.S. than to be funding a country that's bombing and kill, unaliving kids, women, allowing them to be raped and ate, all this type of shit. I don't want my money to be part of none of that. So if I had to choose, I'd rather go ahead and continue to fund the lazy. Yeah, I said it. But they got to vote, though. That part ain't changed. You got to vote. You get any type of assistance, you got to vote. Hey, Bryant.
Political adversary, a message sending by Trump?
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I was fired by Todd Blanche, who was at the time the Deputy Attorney General. He does not have the same authority under the Constitution that the President does, so there's a separate legal question about the legality of my firing because of who did it, and it wasn't the President or the Attorney General. But regardless of who is carrying out these firings, it absolutely sends a message to career experts in the Justice Department and other federal agencies that if you do not get on board with the political agenda of this administration and carry out their objectives at all costs, you will be fired. And that includes actions that raise serious concerns about public safety. I was fired after I informed Todd Blanche's staff that I could not recommend that the Department of Justice reinstate the gun ownership rights of a famous friend of the president who was also convicted of a very serious crime involving domestic violence. There is a ton of data published by the Justice Department, their Office of Violence Against Women, that shows that it's incredibly dangerous for people who are domestic abusers to be armed. It massively increases the risk that their victims will be killed. So I was asked, without having any opportunity to vet this application of this friend of the president, the actor Mel Gibson, to recommend that the department reinstate his gun rights. I raised my objections. I acknowledged that the department could do it without over my objections if the attorney general wanted to, but I wasn't going to give it a veneer of legitimacy by recommending it because it was incredibly dangerous and because I didn't have the information I would need to set aside any concerns about public safety. And literally within hours, Scott, I was fired by Todd Blanche.
Big win, though, here at the court for Trump also in the so-called slaughter case, in which the court ruled in a split decision that Trump does have the power to fire other career officials inside the administration, perhaps widespread firings, something that could have an impact on several different issues down the road. I spoke about that with Aaron Parnas on Substack Live.
I speak with Republicans regularly. A lot of them wanted this case, this ruling more than they wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. I mean, it's that big for the conservative movement. They've been seeking to overturn Humphrey's executive for as long as I could remember. And essentially what the case is it strips independence away from independent agencies like the FTC, the FEC, the NLRB, the USPS Board of Governors, and other independent agencies that are somewhat under the executive branch, and allows Trump to just kind of run roughshod and start firing individuals who he didn't appoint and who he doesn't like. And so to me, this is really the scariest case of them all, because even as Justice Sotomayor wrote into her dissent, this gives Trump more power than the King of England has, because even the King has a check by the Parliament. Here, Congress can't do anything if Trump decides to fire an FEC commissioner, for example, that he doesn't like. He can do whatever he wants.
You're getting many comments about the Supreme Court rulings, a lot of cynicism about the court's ability to continue to deliver victories for democracy and victories for voters. Debbie writes that the Democrats need a Project 29 to get going, to help prepare for the next administration, but also to prepare for the next iteration of this Supreme Court. And thank you for subscribing to Scott McFarland Reports. Please continue to like, share, and comment. Your help supports independent journalism. Really want to thank you for watching.
Hold on, we got a few more.
You can comment, share, and subscribe.
They don't want to count them ballots, though. Your boy, I tell you, if ever it's been a time where we really realize that our vote matters. If we don't know by now, we ought to know. Pay attention. What's going on with, they said it was the lobbyists, or they not on board?
Donald Trump, multiple losses today on major issues, including one that we know he has fought tooth and nail for, but he is losing today, refusing the Supreme Court to take his appeal, which means he loses his bid to try to override the E. Jean Carroll defamation cases. That's a big one. Then also the court siding with voting rights to stop GOP efforts to basically get in the way of the midterms and try to see if they could get away with not counting some of the ballots. It gets into mail and details, but the bottom line is the GOP wanted to stop counting certain ballots. The Supreme Court today saying no to that. But in the most consequential case, the court ruling President Trump cannot go forward with this plot he had trying to fire someone that he doesn't have the authority to fire, at least not the way he tried. So the court rejecting Trump's effort to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook for basically no reason. And that means for now, Trump loses the effort to oust her. She stays in that powerful seat, which affects economic policy. The court ruling that Donald Trump basically cooked his own goose by denying any basic process following the rules in how they tried to remove her. Now, the administration can still go to court in the future to work on what is still a long shot bid to oust her for what so far has been no real reason or process. Today, that's a big loss. The decision, a 5-4 split, Republican appointee Chief Justice Roberts and Republican appointee Brett Kavanaugh joining the court's liberals and stating our Constitution creates 3 branches, but only 1 president. That president is not all-powerful, not by any means. If that theme is familiar, it is how so many of these cases and controversies have gone. In Trump's first term, he was not trying to do this in every direction. And we saw him face
what he did to win. Yeah, he know.
and sometimes reset
But
his
he
powers,
must know
deciding
that
on
they
the
ain't
so-called
on board to do it again.
in the second term, they've been trying everything. And at times they've gotten away with more. And they've gotten away in the short run where they sort of do it and see what happens. This is a big deal today because the Supreme Court, at least on the Fed issue, says you don't have that kind of power. So they are telling Trump he is powerless to oust this federal official the way he tried, and that's a big loss. But, as is often the case with this Supreme Court, it's not all consistent, and it's certainly not all anti-Trump. So whether you consider this good news or not, I'm going to give you the full rundown in plain English of what happened here so you understand some of the several cases, we hope. Because while the court upheld that independence for the Fed, and remember the logic I mentioned, the president's not all powerful. We don't have a one-person government. That's certainly not what the Constitution imagined. It then went in the opposite direction, undercutting that same principle, not just in, say, one other agency, but basically in all the other federal agencies. Justice is ruling that Trump is basically a one-person government when it comes to these independent commissions, which for many decades, under congressional rules in both parties for a long time, have been independent for that very reason, that they're set up different than, say, the cabinet. And yet now the justices say that Trump gets a power that they didn't say Biden had, they didn't say Obama had. Trump has the power, they say, to fire key independent commissioners, like at the FTC and other independent agencies, raising the question of whether we're still going to call them that independent. This decision comes down along a familiar break. NPR notes it was a significant win for the Trump administration, a major expansion of the president's control over parts of the government once seen as a check on his powers. The Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos and is not exactly some raging set of Trump criticism in the news section, simply stated the obvious, that this is the largest change to the structure of government in the United States in, quote, decades. And so this is where we are tonight. Now, if you go online, you might go to one site and only hear part of the story. You might hear the pro-Trump part, the part that's positive for his power, or you could go to another website, another podcast, and they might focus on the other part. Here, we are going to try to show all parts of what the Supreme Court's really doing, and you can make up your own mind about it. I will just tell you that it is glaringly inconsistent. Yeah, I happen to be someone who went to law school. You can hold that against me or not, but in law school, they talk a lot about precedent and jurisprudence, and the lower courts generally follow that. The Supreme Court is different because it can do what it wants, and lately, it's been doing a lot of what it wants, which turns out to be exactly what Donald Trump and MAGA want. Because Joe Biden clashed with independent parts of the government. He followed the rules. They never popped up, and it's a very similar court, of course. We don't have new justices for most of the positions. They never popped up and said, you know what, let's give Joe Biden a lot more power over those independent agencies or student loans or what have you. And so then you say, okay, well, is this a shift where this is just a completely new doctrine? No, for the reasons I just told you. When it comes to the Fed, it's still got to be independent. And so people are left wondering why the court is this inconsistent and why the Trump rules that give him so much more power over all these agencies today, new for the first time in decades, don't extend to the Fed. And is that just because the Fed deals with money and we live in a capitalist system where the Supreme Court's like, hey, they have the MAGA votes, they're going to give him as much as they can, but they don't want to mess with the economy too much because money matters more? If there is a better argument for these rulings, I guess we'll have to find it in the days ahead, but there is a big tension here. I'm telling you that in plain English. As for the official who lost out today, here was her reaction.
I'm very worried about a future where presidents like President Trump can wield this enormous grant of executive power that the Supreme Court just handed to him in order to reward his friends and punish his enemies, and do so with impunity.
That's fair. The Supreme Court has now provided more impunity for that kind of abuse and revenge, something that Donald Trump has done in the very recent past and may do again now, given this legal weaponry. The court gave him that avenue. They also removed another check on his power. So, there we are. Again, this inconsistency or the two directions I'm telling you about, it's that kind of day at the court. Because Donald Trump, more than anyone since, say, probably going all the way back to Jim Crow, has actively admitted an effort to only count certain votes and to go after redistricting in ways we haven't seen in decades. And to basically say he wants ballots counted if they're for him and not for others. He also, of course, is associated with an insurrection. So all of this is the era we're living through. And he wanted to work with Republicans to count fewer ballots in the upcoming midterms. Why? Obviously, because they thought it might help them win. And they found that the court is checking that power for these upcoming midterms. It's ruling that they will be counting all the ballots, including ones that come in as long as they are cast on time, rather than accepting a GOP plan that was going to try to limit certain ballots depending on when they arrive. A 5-4 split.
Yeah, they're jealous of us.
And we should note a Trump appointee, Amy Coney Barrett, siding against the GOP. If you look at the chart on the screen, I told you things are a little all over the place or inconsistent today. We've swapped out Kavanaugh, basically. He's gone there with the GOP on counting fewer ballots. You decide whether you think that's a good thing or not. Obviously, if you're for democracy, you would want to count all the legally cast ballots, not pick and choose, but it's only because another Trump appointee, Barrett, has swung into the majority that you even have this. That is how tenuous a line we are on for counting all the ballots in the next election. Election day statutes don't set a deadline for ballot receipt. They don't prevent The court ruled the state at issue from counting those ballots. Now, that is a move to stop Trump-led Republican efforts to interfere. You know, in the media sometimes we are rightfully held accountable for searching for big headlines and narratives. There's no clear narrative here because the court has gone in different directions on these different issues all in one day. And whether it is aware of that or not, whether it cares, whether Chief Justice Roberts would tell us he's doing the best he can because he's got a Magna Court, or whether they think this all makes perfect sense is open to interpretation. What I can tell you is they are handing Trump new powers that recent presidents haven't had over everything except the economy, which apparently they think is different. And when it comes to whether or not all the ballots will be counted, well, you can exhale a sigh of relief tonight. They will in the next election, but that's just by one vote.
Just by one vote. Woo, Lord, won't he do it? Just by one vote. We take that one. We will take that one. Let's go here. By one vote. Lord, I thank you. Lord, I thank you. Let's see.
State regime.
I'm sorry, let's go. Oh, Lord, I should have checked the internet before I started.
Media, which calls itself Fox, is in panic mode as Donald Trump is going ballistic on them. Donald Trump is livid that state regime media has not been promoting his disastrous state fair enough. So state regime media has been out there all day trying to get people to show up, and nobody's showing up. And I'll show you how pathetic state regime media looks right now.
He had a
earlier
fair.
in the day, Donald Trump posted that this state fair is the greatest thing ever. He writes, "Do you think people appreciate what a fantastic job we did in building and operating the Great American State Fair at the National Mall, packed with happy people and everybody loving it?" Ask yourself this simple question: do you think that Obama or Sleepy Joe Biden could have done it? The answer is no. Then Donald Trump ordered state regime media, "You need to go and say there's so much energy and people are having so much fun. Your regime media, do it." And I'm going to show you what Fox was doing. They're like, "There are so many people out there. This is so amazing right now." While there's nobody out there, watch as Sandra Smith on state regime media says, lots of energy down there. And then Fox has the live shot. There's nobody there. Here, play this clip.
Mark, great to see you here today. A lot of energy down there. What's the latest?
Nothing.
Sandra, it sure is. And welcome back to Washington. So good to see you personally. As you've seen yourself, there is a big energy here on...
A big energy, y'all. Have he not been to the State Fair of Texas? I mean, he said, I'm going to show y'all this frackanaka. Great energy.
The National Mall. The crowd sizes were smaller in the morning. It has picked up quite a bit. The State Fair generating a lot of... Sandra, it sure is. And welcome back to Washington. So good to see you personally. As you've seen yourself, there is a big energy here on the National Mall. The crowd sizes were smaller in the morning.
Yeah, what is this?
It has picked up quite a bit. The State Fair generating a lot of headlines. And we have seen more people come to see it for themselves, including right to the Ferris wheel. You'll zoom in here and see the crowds that are lined up for a chance to see Washington, unlike any other way. But people told us this isn't about politics, but a chance to celebrate what America offers coast to coast.
Each state, I've heard, is represented in some way.
Was this supposed to compete with Juneteenth or something? What? Wait, what? What is this? It's a no for me. No. What is this? This is a park event. This is not a fair.
I just want to feel the energy in D.C. and see what the fair is all about.
We just wanted to see all the different parts of it and states, some of their exhibits and everything. So
hey, Lawrence. Hey, Lawrence.
are
What you say, Samantha? Where the people at? Where the party people at? Who sang that? Who sang that song? Where they at?
Today at the State Fair, it is the
Do,
Great American
do,
Maha
do,
Movement
do,
Monday, everybody.
do,
While State Regime
man,
Media is
baby.
showing people gagging
Oh,
on
yes, the
pancakes
Gap
and nearly
Band.
puking. Yeah, everything this Trump regime does is grotesque. There's nobody there, and they're stuffing themselves with pancakes and like vomiting. What in the
Where they
maggot
at?
is this? Here,
Where the party people at?
Glad here for
Where?
the Freedom 250 to be here that we could come because of this great country.
Then you have the Fox Chiron announcing that today at the
No
State
people
Fair,
fair.
it is the Great American Maha Movement Monday, everybody.
Maha
While State
Movement
regime
Monday.
media is showing people gagging on pancakes and nearly
And the
puking.
holla.
Everything this Trump
And
regime
the
does
food ain't good.
is grotesque.
And you trying to compare and compete with Juneteenth? You gonna always lose when you try to compare yourself, your fun, your entertainment, the food to anything pertaining to black people. I mean, we all 50 shades of brown, respectfully, boo-boo. But some things you just ain't gonna be able to entertain, compete, none of that. That's like sitting down with some folk playing cards and dominoes, and y'all sitting up there doing pinochle and, pinochle, what? Go fishing. Do you have a two? No. Go fishing and finding fun and pleasure in that type of stuff. You can't compete with us. You just can't. Why people getting sick? Because their food ain't good. Because Big Mama and them aunties and mamas and them ain't putting their fingers and toes all off in that shit. You know how they say, boy, you put your whole, what they say, you put your whole foot in that. Heck no. Y'all playing the game. Y'all will not ever be able to compete. That's why y'all can't stand us. We prettier than y'all. We classier. Yeah, that's why y'all have to steal everything from us. Yes, y'all have to steal everything. You ain't never in your entire life seen so many peach shades of the brown have asses that's bigger than ours. Shit. Baby, please. Let's go.
Well, Mark, great to see you here today. There's a lot of energy down there. What's the latest?
Sandra, it sure is, and welcome back to Washington. So good to see you personally. As you've seen yourself, there is a big energy here on the National Mall. The crowd sizes are smaller in the morning. It has picked up quite a bit. The State Fair generating a lot of headlines, and we have seen more people come to see it for themselves, including right to the Ferris wheel. You'll zoom in here and see the crowds that are lined up for a chance to see Washington, unlike any other way. But people told us this isn't about politics, but a chance to celebrate what America offers coast to coast.
They sure gonna be mad with me. They sit down and play some spades.
In some way, so I just want to feel the energy in
It's boring.
See what
Just
the fair is
say it's
all about.
We just wanted to see all the different
go back to the MEMPHIS in the hills.
States, some of their exhibits and everything. So we just are glad
Y'all
here
bored.
for the Freedom 250 to be here that we could come because of this
great
country.
Yeah. Then you have the Fox Chiron announcing that today at the State Fair, it is the Great American Maha Movement Monday, everybody. While State regime media is showing people gagging on pancakes and nearly puking. Yeah, everything this Trump regime does is grotesque. There's nobody there, and they're stuffing themselves with pancakes and like vomiting. What in the MAGA is this? Here, play this clip.
And this morning, 4 younger Americans put their stomachs to the test with a pancake eating contest. That's tough on any day, let alone in this kind of heat. The winner was determined by audience applause. The guy who won appeared really worried he wasn't going to be able to keep the pancakes down, but in the end, he made it.
More on state regime media, they bring in Doug Burgum, and they're trying to pretend that there's all these people. Just look at the Fox shot here, and you will see behind them, there's like 12 people there. On a normal day, June 29th, in the Washington Mall, without this fair, there would be thousands times more people enjoying themselves. But nobody wants to be associated with this grotesque thing that Donald Trump has done to DC, into this country, into the world. Here, play this clip.
Scene behind us, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, it was great.
Thanks for inviting us.
I haven't seen the elephant food booth yet, though. I've seen the elephant sandwiches.
So each day has got a theme. Today's theme is Make America Healthy Again, and I'm wondering, how does a pancake eating contest comport with Make America?
No red food dyes, right? It's just all natural ingredients.
All natural. Eggs, milk, butter. What else do you need?
Then they go back to the booth. They go back to New York City, which, of course, state regime media pretends they hate New York City, but that's where their headquarters is. And then so they're talking about this, Maha Monday. And then they go, on Maha Monday, we should be blessed that because of Donald Trump, you have the freedom to eat what you want. That's Maha, baby. That's Maha. Here, play this clip.
I do got to say, though, Maha Monday, I'm a little bit skeptical of whether it's actually Maha. This is some of the food that's being offered at the fair, okay? Not to be a Debbie Downer. Corn dogs, jumbo chicken on a stick, loaded mac and cheese, Chicago and New York style pizza, and cheesy fries with hatch queso. That is all up my alley. I don't know if it's technically Maha Monday, but the state exhibits are more than worth the trip in and of itself. Some of the highlights that I got to see that I wrote down because I want everyone to know what's there. The train simulator at the Nebraska booth, Waffle House hats at the Georgia booth, the Orange Grove scent in the Florida booth that they piped in from the state. These are just some of the great highlights that also just show how quirky all of the American states are. And it just really goes to show that when you put all of those quirks and those flaws together, it really makes for an exceptional nation.
So here's the thing. It is Maha Monday, but we have the freedom to eat what we want.
It's true.
Right. Okay, waffles and pancakes.
Yeah, I think, talking about what Kaylee's, addressing here with the food is you have to...
All of this sound boring.
Sound
like he tried to emulate something that Michelle Obama tried to do with the healthy food.
I don't think it has to be always this very strict diet. I think it shows that we can focus on our health, but yet remember that these are the times we're supposed to celebrate. And when you're celebrating, go to the fair and have some fun food. I don't think many are going to the fair if they're serving kale and hummus. And
I will say though, no one's going to a salad fair.
Right.
They will be.
By the way, they'll also slather your food with glyphosate after the Supreme Court just recently ruled that the companies that produce glyphosate are immune from any litigation at all because federal law preempts it. And RFK says glyphosate is okay with me, and the Trump regime says that's our preferred herbicide. Let's slather it over everything. Back to state regime media over here.
Still trying to pause
again, they're going to state regime media it, and then they're like, Doug Burgum's like, just think, Washington, our first. Teddy Roosevelt, 125. Donald Trump here on 250. Just think about how amazing things are. I mean, folks, this is right out of some weirdo North Korea stuff. And again, look in the background, you'll see nobody there. Let's play this clip.
Very special president, to be sure.
Yeah, well, and he was president at the 125th, so I think we had Washington at the first, we had TR at the 125th, and we've got President Trump at the 250. All three of them remarkable change makers moving our country forward.
Well, then they bring on this guy, Marcus Lemonis. He's, to me, right out of the Dr. Oz, playbook right here.
It's too hot over there for you.
You'll see over here as they start talking about, how great things are going. Again, you'll see that, even on the shots that Fox is showing, there's nobody there. Let's play this.
Nobody.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
I think being healthy, though, is about having some choices, and it's a philosophy. And for those of you that remember when we were in grade school, we would take this presidential fitness test.
Yes.
And it was tough because
President Trump just brought it back.
Yeah.
I know, which makes me nervous because I had to do pull-ups and it wasn't great in front of all the other girls in school. But I think it's a philosophy, and I think having fun and knowing where the balance is part of it.
We're also...
And I'm sure they hours paid. I'm sure they got paid to be there to play with that stuff. See, nobody of color. He mad at the black people now.
Aaron Rupert explains, did the rapture happen overnight? State regime media broadcasting from a completely empty Trump state fair. And then they're like, and look who we got here. Brooke Rollins, the agriculture secretary. Okay, this isn't Like,
Oh,
yay,
wow.
my favorite character on the Trump reality show, it's Brooke Rollins. Yeah, no one wants to see Brooke Rollins. You know what I want to see my agriculture secretary doing? Not this. I'd like to see them in a boring agriculture building, Department of Agriculture building. Actually, get this, helping farmers, helping agriculture. And now what, we're going to have to bail out farmers yet again because Donald Trump's tariffs against the world,
because he
Donald
gave
Trump's
BB
catastrophic war
Netanyahu
are screwing everyone. But guys,
$40 billion.
Brooke Rollins is in this episode. Yay! This isn't some like weirdo apprentice. We got Penn and Teller, Brooke Rollins, Marcus Lemonis, or whatever the guy's name is. Here, play this clip.
So yes, it's typically hot in the summer, but it's not this hot in the summer. That's it from here for me. But a guy who knows all about places that are
National
hot.
Guard, stop
Lawrence,
those
LJ,
people.
you're over in Texas, I think. Where it's always hot
I
out
was
there.
born in the heat, and that's Texas.
Yeah, you
All
were.
right, Adam, thank you so much. All right, so we're right in front of the Texas tent. This is where everything big happens. All right, if you look over there, there's a rodeo. You're going to get cattle. You're going to get horses. And that's all from Texas. But I want y'all to meet
Where the people
a special
at?
friend. You know it well. Let's go. Texas tent. This is where everything big happens. All right, if you look over there, there's a rodeo. You're gonna
Where
get
the people
cattle.
at?
You're gonna get horses, and that's all from Texas. But
Yeah.
I want y'all to meet a special friend. You know it well. Let's go.
Wow,
This is the
empty.
Secretary of Agriculture.
Oh my goodness, welcome to Texas.
Empty.
Back home. So,
And on this sicko reality show, while they're promoting this awful fair, they bring in Dr. Oz because this is some weirdo reality show stuff. So Dr. Oz shows up, and Dr. Oz is like, can you believe it, folks? Let me show you why Obamacare is
How can they sit up there and act like there's thousands of people there?
There are 40% of people on Obamacare who never actually need to use the insurance. By the way, who knows if that's even actually the right stat because the Trump regime lies about everything. But guess what, Oz? You know, there are people who have insurance, and one of the things about it is that sometimes you don't need to use it. And
Like
the
me.
idea of insurance, you should know this, Oz, I guess we don't care about people, is building a risk pool where, yes, the 40% who didn't need it but who are still paying into the system, right, are helping the people who do need it. And guess what? Those 40% who may not need it, you know the way health works? Sometimes it doesn't work. And then you need it. And then so the risk pool helps you. That's the purpose of insurance. And as I've always said, what we need to do is shift that risk pool to the entire country and have single payer and make sure that everybody gets free health insurance. That should be a right. I don't care about, I care about it, but why should we have somebody in the Oval Office doing market manipulation and 3,700 stock trades and, you know, we have trillionaires. I want people to get health care. That's what I really want right now. Here, play this clip.
Historically, Obamacare had 9 million people on it. 9 million people. This year, over 23 million people apparently signed up. But of the people who signed up, 40% never used the insurance. Let me ask you a question, John. You have health insurance. Do you use it once a year? Buy a prescription, you go visit a doctor, you call somebody?
if I don't use it once a day,
Well, in Obamacare,
Send
right
them
now,
a refund
40%
check
of
who
the
paid
people
into
ostensibly signed up never use the insurance. So it raises, again, the reality that there are many people who are signed up who are getting paid.
Yeah, but y'all wouldn't, but since y'all doing all of this, manipulating the food, the air, the water, yeah, more people are getting sick.
But don't believe they have the insurance, don't know they have insurance, didn't want the insurance, and these brokers are able to make a ton of money off the American taxpayer. So, of course, the Democrats are arguing aggressively that any people who leave Obamacare is only happening because of the enhanced premium subsidies that were put in place for a short period of time during COVID by the Democrats. That's not right. The reality is we have a lot of fake people on the policies. We want them off because they don't want the insurance. They're covered elsewhere, or at least they never wanted to be in this program. If they want other ones, it's fine. And we're going to get to the bottom of this. And what Secretary Kennedy announced on this video is really critical. A million people with fake Social Security numbers, that's an insult to the American people. We're not going to tolerate it.
Yeah, you referenced that video.
Hat tip to Anarchy Princess. She's getting great footage. She's showing what it's looked like to be at the Great American Fair. And just look at these buildings, as she says. They're basically just covered in printed sheets that are stapled on. Let's show you.
This is This is horrible.
Staples.
Ain't nobody there. Waste of
Don't
money.
touch it, because you know how they feel about touching things around here.
Sheets. Half-ass done.
Quality craftsmanship. America. American workers.
Then she goes, it's like someone stood at one end of the mall with a laser and measured the height of the ground, but didn't take into account that the ground was uneven. Here, play this clip right here.
Just throwing some shit together.
Until July, build your vacation body.
For
Tomorrow morning, we're starting the free printable Tai Chi
picture
walking challenge
to
for
act
women
like
over 60. Just
they
7 minutes a day to tone
are
flabby
doing
arms
something.
and lose
Ain't
belly
doing
weight.
nothing. This is horrible. Faking the fun. Who paid for this? We paid for this? Taxpayers paid for this crap? It just keeps getting worse and worse. Let me move on. This ain't even worth my time. Not this one. Let's go here, because we got a war going on.
Personal stenographer. Yeah.
Hold on. Let's hear the president. Yeah, hold on.
What happened this past week with Vice President J.D. Vance was one of those moments. Now, I want you to stay with me here, because this is not about one interview, and it's not about one soundbite. This is about the future of how this country transfers power. On Friday night, June the 26th, Bill Maher looked the sitting Vice President of the United States in the eye on national television and asked him a simple question.
What the fuck is going on?
Will you concede an election if you lose? Now think about that.
Oh, Lord.
That used to be the kind of question nobody needed to ask, because the answer was so obvious it would have been embarrassing to even bring it up. But Maher asked it. And J.D. Vance, the man most people expect to be the Republican nominee in 2028, could not say yes. He laughed nervously, shifted in his chair, and said, quote, "This is where I'm probably going to lose you." And folks, that answer tells you more about where we're headed as a country than any policy speech or campaign rally ever could. The Blue Bill had already documented how Vance has been quietly repackaging election denial as a First Amendment argument for months. And that's exactly the playbook he ran on Maher's show. But here's what makes
Can y'all hear me now?
quietly repackaging election denial as a First Amendment argument for months. And that's exactly the playbook he ran on Maher's show. But here's what makes this bigger than one interview. The day before, Vance was standing in the Richard Nixon Presidential Library saying things that ought to chill anyone who cares about accountability in government. And we'll come back to that, because those 2 days together paint a picture that every American needs to see clearly. Now let me give you the full context, because timing matters in politics. It always has. On Thursday, June the 25th,
J.D. Vance visited the Nixon Presidential Library in Yorba Linda, California. He was promoting his new book, Communion, about his conversion to Catholicism. But the conversation turned to Nixon, and what Vance said was extraordinary. He told that audience that Watergate, if it happened tomorrow, would be, quote, a 12-hour news story. He said the idea that it took down a presidency was, quote, crazy. Then he compared himself to Nixon. Young senator, vice president, writes best-selling books, hated by the media. His words, not mine. Now, the next evening, less than 24 hours later, Vance walked into CBS Television City in Los Angeles to sit down with Bill Maher on Real Time. He became the first sitting vice president to appear on that program. And this wasn't a friendly venue for the administration. Maher's audience skews independent, politically curious, the kind of voters who actually decide elections. So what Vance said there carried more weight than anything he could say on Fox News or at a rally. And all of this was happening while American strikes on Iranian targets were escalating, while Iran was retaliating, while the fragile ceasefire Vance himself had helped negotiate in Switzerland just days earlier was falling apart.
If it is invalid, we promise a tenfold refund. This denture can be successfully worn in just 1 second and is suitable for everyone. Whether you have complete teeth, partial missing teeth, or no teeth at all, you don't need adhesives, dentists, or appointments. Just soak it in hot water to activate the elastic material, bite it to fit your unique oral shape, and within a few minutes, you can have brand new dentures. My friends all say they look very realistic, just like dental implants. It fundamentally solves the problem of missing or loose teeth, as well as various issues such as sensitivity and difficulty chewing. Amazing, soft silicone is suitable for any oral condition.
He was supposed to be the administration's carried more weight than anything he could say on Fox News or at a rally. And
You're
all of this was
in and
happening.
out. I'm in and
while
out.
American strikes on Iranian targets were escalating.
I'm in and out.
While Iran was retaliating. While the fragile ceasefire Vance himself had helped negotiate in Switzerland just days earlier was falling apart. He was supposed to be the administration's lead diplomat on the most dangerous foreign policy crisis of this presidency. Instead, he was in Hollywood doing a book tour. And that tells you something about priorities. Let me tell you something. Let's walk through exactly what Vance said.
I'm in and out, y'all.
Because the details matter more than the headlines. First, the election question. Maher told Vance his vote was in play for 2028. He said if Democrats keep moving toward democratic socialism, he might vote Republican. But then Maher laid down his deal breaker. He said, under Trump, you have two outcomes an election can be.
I'm having system issues, y'all. Can y'all not hear me?
Either we win or they cheated, and that has to stop. He asked Vance directly, will you bring us back to the middle where we concede elections? Vance's answer was not yes. He said, I don't think we should not concede elections, but I don't think that's what's going on. Then he pivoted to technology companies censoring information in 2020. He reframed the entire question of election denial into a debate about social media. Maher wasn't buying it. He told Vance, "You're going to get a big pat on the back when you get back to the White House." Second, Iran. Vance claimed the nuclear program was, quote, functionally destroyed. Maher pushed back and asked how we know that. Vance couldn't cite a single piece of evidence. Third, when Maher pressed him on ICE enforcement going too far, Vance said you can't do deportations without situations that, quote, don't look good when they're recorded. He wouldn't acknowledge any overreach. 3 questions, 3 opportunities for honesty, and 3...
You don't have integrity.
3 times he chose political calculation over candor. Now look, I've been in those chairs. I know what it's like when someone asks you a hard question on national television, and you know 30 million people are going to judge your answer. But here's what I learned in 8 years in the Oval Office. The moments that define your leadership are not the ones where you give the clever answer. They're the ones where you give the honest one. When Vance was asked whether he'd concede an election, a simple yes would have cost him nothing with any voter who actually cares about this country. Nothing. It might have even helped him with the independence Maher represents. But he couldn't do it because he's afraid of a base that has been taught to believe losing is impossible. And that's a leadership failure. On Iran, I negotiated the agreed framework with North Korea in 1994. Now, people can debate whether that deal held up, and that's fair. But I'll tell you what we never did. We never went on television and told the American people a nuclear program was destroyed when we couldn't verify it. Because credibility is the currency of diplomacy. The Blue Bill ran a detailed examination of how Vance's Watergate comments at the Nixon Library represent a deliberate effort to normalize the idea that presidential misconduct shouldn't carry
I don't know what's going on.
And I think that analysis is exactly right. If you tell the country that the worst abuse of presidential power in modern history was no big deal, you're not defending Nixon. You're building permission for the next president who wants to cross the line. Here's what concerns me most about all of this, and I want you to really think about this. When a likely presidential candidate won't commit to conceding elections, the damage doesn't start on election night.
Backing up.
Now let me give you the full...
See this
I
graph?
may have to start over.
Auto shops will easily charge you $2,000. Now watch this.
Full context, because timing matters in politics. It always has. On Thursday, June the 25th, J.D. Vance visited the Nixon Presidential Library in Yorba Linda, California. He was promoting his new book, Communion, about his conversion to Catholicism. But the conversation turned to Nixon, and what Vance said was extraordinary. He told that audience that Watergate, if it happened tomorrow, would be, quote, a 12-hour news story. He said the idea that it took down a presidency was, quote, crazy. Then he compared himself to Nixon. Young senator, vice president, writes best-selling books, hated by the media. His words, not mine. Now, the next evening, less than 24 hours later, Vance walked into CBS Television City in Los Angeles to sit down with Bill Maher on real time. He became the first sitting vice president to appear on that program. And this wasn't a friendly venue for the administration. Maher's audience skews independent, politically curious, the kind of voters who actually decide elections. So what Vance said there carried more weight than anything he could say on Fox News or at a rally. And all of this was happening while American strikes on Iranian targets were escalating, while Iran was retaliating, while the fragile ceasefire Vance himself had helped negotiate in Switzerland just days earlier was falling apart. He was supposed to be the administration's lead diplomat on the most dangerous foreign policy crisis of this presidency. Instead, he was in Hollywood doing a book tour. And that tells you something about priorities. Let me tell you something. Let's walk through exactly what Vance said on that show, because the details matter more than the headlines. First, the election question. Maher told Vance his vote was in play for 2028. He said if Democrats keep moving toward democratic socialism, he might vote Republican. But then Maher laid down his deal breaker. He said, under Trump, you have two outcomes an election can be. Either we win or they cheated, and that has to stop. He asked Vance directly, will you bring us back to the middle where we concede elections? Vance's answer was not yes. He said, I don't think we should not concede elections, but I don't think that's what's going on. Then he pivoted to technology companies censoring information in 2020. He reframed the entire question of election denial into a debate about social media. Maher wasn't buying it. He told Vance, you're going to get a big pat on the back when you get back to the White House. Second, Iran. Vance claimed the nuclear program was, quote, functionally destroyed. Maher pushed back and asked how we know that. Vance couldn't cite a single piece of evidence. Third, when Maher pressed him on ICE enforcement going too far, Vance said you can't do deportations without situations that, quote, don't look good when they're recorded. He wouldn't acknowledge any overreach. 3 questions, 3 opportunities for honesty, and 3 times he chose political calculation over candor. Now look, I've been in those chairs. I know what it's like when someone asks you a hard question on national television, and you know 30 million people are going to judge your answer. But here's what I learned in 8 years in the Oval Office. The moments that define your leadership are not the ones where you give the clever answer. They're the ones where you give the honest one.
If you do 25 leg raises a day,
y'all
your
please
apron
hit the
belly will
like
go bye-bye.
button.
If you do 25 leg presses a day, your peach will get
Or
nice.
double tap the 3 buttons at the top.
When Vance was asked whether he'd concede an election, a simple yes would have cost him nothing with any voter who actually cares about this country. Nothing. It might have even helped him with the independence Maher represents. But he couldn't do it because he's afraid of a base that has been taught to believe losing is impossible. And that's a leadership failure. On Iran, I negotiated the agreed framework with North Korea in 1994. Now, people can debate whether that deal held up, and that's fair. But I'll tell you what we never did. We never went on television and told the American people a nuclear program was destroyed when we couldn't verify it. Because credibility is the currency of diplomacy. The Blue Bill ran a detailed examination of how Vance's Watergate comments at the Nixon Library represent a deliberate effort to normalize the idea that presidential misconduct shouldn't carry consequences. And I think that analysis is exactly right. If you tell the country that the worst abuse of presidential power in modern history was no big deal, you're not defending Nixon. You're building permission for the next president who wants to cross the line. Here's what concerns me most about all of this, and I want you to really think about this. When a likely presidential candidate won't commit to conceding elections, the damage doesn't start on election night. It starts right now. It starts in state legislatures, where officials watch that interview and think, well, if the vice president won't commit to it, why should I? It starts with local election boards, where volunteers wonder whether their work even matters if the losing side is just going to call it rigged. It starts with voters, millions of them, who begin to internalize the idea that elections are only legitimate when their side wins. That is the most dangerous idea in a democracy. Not any single policy, not any trade deal or tax cut, but the idea that the rules only apply when they benefit you. And what Vance did at the Nixon Library the day before makes it worse. Because he didn't just dismiss Watergate. He said the deep state took down Nixon. He drew a direct line between Nixon and Trump and said the same forces targeted both of them. Now let me be very clear about what Watergate actually was. It was a break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters, followed by a cover-up that involved secret payments, obstruction of justice, and abuse of presidential power. The President of the United States used the machinery of government to protect himself from accountability. And J.D. Vance stood in that library and said it wouldn't even be a real story today. If that doesn't alarm you, I don't know what will. Now let me tell you what I think is really going on here. Because this wasn't just an interview. This was a 2028 campaign event disguised as a book tour. J.D. Vance was performing for two audiences at once, and he knew exactly what he was doing. For Mars viewers, the independents and the center-left folks who might be frustrated with the Democratic Party, he was the reasonable Republican. He smiled, he engaged, he didn't raise his voice, he wore the moderate mask well. But for the MAGA base watching clips afterward, he delivered the real message. He didn't break from Trump on elections. He didn't admit ICE went too far. He defended every inch of the administration's position while making it sound like common sense. That's a sophisticated political operation. And I'll give him credit for the skill, even as I worry about what it means. And here's the part that should concern Democrats just as much. Bill Maher, a man who's been criticizing this administration every single Friday night, sat across from the vice president and told him his vote was in play. He blamed Democratic socialists winning primaries in New York. He talked about anti-capitalism and what he called Jew-hating on the left.
Y'all got Daniel? Hold on. On the website, y'all, ain't no way you guys are a print-on-demand company. Come on now. Be special.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend there aren't real debates happening inside the Democratic Party. There are. But when a prominent voice like Maher is openly telling a Republican vice president that he might vote for him, that is a 5-alarm fire for anyone who cares about building a governing majority for democratic values. We cannot cede the center and then act surprised when people like Vance walk right to the door we left open. Let me tell you where I think this leads. And I wish the picture were simpler, but it's not.
Wow.
If J.D. Vance enters the 2028 presidential race, and all signs suggest he will, he enters it having already refused to commit to the most basic principle of democratic governance. That creates a structural problem before a single vote is cast. Here's one path. Vance eventually pivots, distances himself from the election denial language to win independence in a general election. But his Marr answer makes that pivot much harder because it's on tape, and opponents in both parties will use it. Here's another path. He doubles down, and the 2028 election becomes a referendum not just on policy, but on whether democracy itself is negotiable. That's a darker road than any of us should want to travel. And there's a third possibility, which is that Democrats do the hard work of reclaiming the center, putting forward candidates who speak to working people's real concerns, and making this a clear contrast election about competence and values. The Blue Bill published a sharp analysis of how election denial normalization is already reshaping the 2028 primary landscape on both sides. And I think the evidence supports exactly that concern. On Iran, the consequences are just as real. If that nuclear program is not actually destroyed, and Vance cannot prove that it is, then America has made a promise to the world it can't keep. And in diplomacy, broken credibility doesn't come back with a tweet. You know, I've watched every presidential transition in this country since I was a boy in Arkansas. I watched Eisenhower hand the office to Kennedy. I watched Nixon resign and Ford take the oath. I watched my own transition in 2001 when I welcomed George W. Bush to the White House, a man I had campaigned hard against because the American people had spoken. And that moment, that walk through the doors of the White House with the person who is about to take your place, that is not a tradition. It's a covenant. It is the promise we make to each other that no matter how hard we fight, no matter how much we disagree, we will respect the verdict of the people. When J.D. Vance sat on that stage and could not bring himself to say, yes, I will concede if I lose, he wasn't just dodging a question. He was telling America that the covenant is optional, and I don't believe it is. I know this country is divided. I know both parties have work to do. I know that the challenges we face, from the economy to the Middle East to the future of our own democratic institutions, are as serious as any I've seen in my lifetime. But I also know this: the American people have more common sense, more decency, and more love for this country than any politician gives them credit for. They will not accept a future where conceding an election is treated as weakness, because it's not weakness. It's the strongest thing a free people do. It's how we prove every 4 years that this experiment in self-governance is still worth believing in. And I, for one, still believe it.
Come on, let's get to the next one. Y'all hit the like button.
Certain things in American life.
Can I get y'all to tap the face of y'all screen? If you're listening in on your phone device, get them up. If you're on your computer device, hit those 3 dots at the top right corner. I'm an hour and 35 minutes in. So only one person gonna hit the like button? 2. So y'all ready for me to shut it down? I need for everybody who don't want to hit the like button to leave. Get out. I need for 40 of y'all to get the fuck up out of here. Hey, Barbara. I need for y'all to leave if y'all feel like y'all just don't want to hit the like button. I'm cool with that, but I want you up out of here.
Your social
I'm going to
security
catch y'all
number,
slipping and I'm just going to end it.
your birth certificate, and your passport. That little blue book is the most personal document your government will ever hand you because it does something nothing else can. It tells the entire world this person is an American citizen and the United States of America stands behind them. When you hand that passport to a border agent in London or Seoul or Buenos Aires, that book is the only thing between you and a foreign government's authority. It is the physical, tangible relationship between you and your country. Now, on June 26th, the sitting President of the United States posted a rendering of that document on Truth Social. His face was on it. His signature was in gold. And the message he attached to it read, quote, "Welcome, but be good." And I want you to hold on to that phrase for a moment because we're going to come back to it. And when we do, it's going to tell you more than you might expect. The Blue Bill had been following this branding story for weeks before that post ever landed. One of those sources that just lays out what's happening without telling you how to feel about it. And what they were tracking turned out to be exactly right. But here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. This isn't about a picture on a page. This is about what happens when the one document that represents every single American starts representing one person. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Now let me walk you through what you're actually looking at, because the details here are important. The rendering Trump posted shows his portrait, and it appears to be based on the image from his Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery photograph, positioned over the Resolute desk, superimposed directly on top of the full text of the Declaration of Independence. His signature sits at the bottom in gold lettering. On the opposite page, you've got John Trumbull's famous 1819 painting of the Founding Fathers gathered for the signing of the Declaration. The whole thing carries United States of America 250 branding tied to the nation's semi-quincentennial. Now, this concept wasn't brand new. The State Department first announced a commemorative passport back in April of 2026, calling it a limited edition document to mark America's 250th birthday. Somewhere between 25 and 30,000 copies will be issued starting July 6th. exclusively through in-person appointments at the Washington Passport Agency. You can still get a standard passport through normal channels, online, by mail, at other agencies. But here's what makes this different from any commemorative stamp or coin. This is the first time in American history that a living president's image has appeared inside a United States passport. The current passport features the Statue of Liberty, the Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, Mount Rushmore, the Great Plains, symbols that belong to no single American. I want you to sit with that contrast for a moment, because it's going to matter a great deal as we go deeper. Now let's talk about those 5 words. Welcome, but be good. Let me tell you something, and I mean this sincerely. I have carried a passport for over 50 years. As governor, as president, as a private citizen traveling the world on behalf of causes I believe in.
I wonder how many Trumpers listened to the previous one. I don't know. But y'all finna stop hearing it in a minute because y'all ain't got these likes up. I don't care if it's 100. I don't care how many people in here. If y'all can't get my likes up, y'all not gonna listen. Just period. I'm gonna make you leave.
Great deal as we go deeper. Now let's talk about those 5 words. Welcome, but be good. Let me tell you something, and I mean this sincerely.
Get the likes up!
I have carried a passport for over 50 years. As governor, as president, as a private citizen traveling the world on behalf of causes I believe in. And in all that time, I never once thought of my passport as a welcome mat, because that is not what a passport does. A passport is issued to American citizens. It is not given to foreign visitors. Quotation marks and says this is what the passport says.
Y'all asses just won't leave. Get out.
Let me tell you something, and I mean this sincerely. I have carried a passport for over 50 years. It's something nothing else can. You know, there are certain things in American life that belong to everybody. Your social security number, your birth certificate, your passport. That little blue book is the most personal document your government will ever hand you, because it does something nothing else can. It tells the entire world this person is an American citizen, and the United States of America stands behind them. When you hand that passport to a border agent in London or Seoul or Buenos Aires, that book is the only thing between you and a foreign government's authority. It is the physical, tangible relationship between you and your country. Now, on June 26th, the sitting President of the United States posted a rendering of that document on Truth Social. His face was on it. His signature was in gold. And the message he attached to it read, quote, "Welcome, but be good." And I want you to hold on to that phrase for a moment, because we're going to come back to it. And when we do, it's going to tell you more than you might expect. The Blue Bill had been following this branding story for weeks before that post ever landed. One of those sources that just lays out what's happening without telling you how to feel about it. And what they were tracking turned out to be exactly right. But here's what I want you to understand before we go any further. This isn't about a picture on a page. This is about what happens when the one document that represents every single American starts representing one person. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Now let me walk you through what you're actually looking at, because the details here are important. The rendering Trump posted shows his portrait, and it appears to be based on the image from his Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery photograph, positioned over the Resolute desk, superimposed directly on top of the full text of the Declaration of Independence. His signature sits at the bottom in gold lettering. On the opposite page, you've got John Trumbull's famous 1819 painting of the Founding Fathers gathered for the signing of the Declaration. The whole thing carries United States of America 250 branding tied to the nation's semi-quincentennial. Now, this concept wasn't brand new. The State Department first announced a commemorative passport back in April of 2026, calling it a limited edition document to mark America's 250th birthday. Somewhere between 25 and 30,000 copies will be issued starting July 6th, exclusively through in-person appointments at the Washington Passport Agency. You can still get a standard passport through normal channels, online, by mail, at other agencies. But here's what makes this different from any commemorative stamp or coin. This is the first time in American history that a living president's image has appeared inside a United States passport. The current passport features the Statue of Liberty, the Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, Mount Rushmore, the Great Plains, symbols that belong to no single American. I want you to sit with that contrast for a moment, because it's going to matter a great deal as we go deeper. Now let's talk about those 5 words. Welcome, but be good. Let me tell you something, and I mean this sincerely. I have carried a passport for over 50 years. As governor, as president, as a private citizen traveling the world on behalf of causes I believe in. And in all that time, I never once thought of my passport as a welcome mat, because that is not what a passport does. A passport is issued to American citizens. It is not given to foreign visitors. When you use your passport, you are leaving the country. Your government is vouching for you to someone else's government. That's a visa that welcomes someone in. That's a completely different document with a completely different purpose. So when the President of the United States puts a phrase in quotation marks and says, this is what the passport says, and that phrase is, welcome, but be good, you have to ask yourself, welcome to where? And be good for whom? Now look, I know some folks have argued he meant it metaphorically, that the spirit of the design carries that message. But here's the honest truth. When you put words in quotes and say, which says, you are telling people those words are on the document. That's not metaphor. That is either a fundamental misunderstanding of what a passport is, or it's deliberate misdirection. And frankly, neither one is acceptable when you're talking about an official document of the United States government. But I want you to understand something. This is not about a passport. This is about a pattern. And the pattern is unlike anything we have seen in the modern history of the American presidency. Since the beginning of this second term, the sitting president's name or image has been placed on the U.S. Institute of Peace building. Large banners bearing his face have been draped across the Department of Justice, the Department of Labor, and the Department of Agriculture. His name was added to the Kennedy Center, and the courts had to step in to address that. There are Trump-class battleships. Trump accounts for children's savings. His signature is replacing the Treasury Secretary's on United States currency. His image replaced the annual photo contest winner on national park passes, which triggered a federal lawsuit. There is a commemorative gold coin with his likeness. There's TrumpRx.gov and TrumpIRA.gov. The Blue Bill ran a breakdown of how the 250th anniversary has become the justification for nearly every one of these branding efforts. And the timeline they assembled was striking. Now, I'll tell you this about my own time in office. I balanced the federal budget. I signed welfare reform. I helped negotiate peace in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. And I never once considered putting my face on a government building while I was still sitting in it. Not because I lack confidence, believe me, but because I understood something that seems to have gotten lost. The institutions of government are not branding opportunities. They are the infrastructure of self-governance, and there is a difference. And this is where things start to get complicated, because a passport isn't just a travel document. It's the most internationally recognized form of American identity that exists. When a customs officer in Frankfurt or Nairobi or Tokyo holds your passport, they are not admiring the artwork. They are making a judgment about the country that issued it. Is it stable? Is it credible? Is it trustworthy? Now think about what happens when that document, the one that represents 330 million Americans of every political persuasion, carries one man's face and one man's gold signature. It stops being a national document. It becomes a political statement. It seems to be a pretty general rebuke. And for the millions of Americans who did not vote for this president or who disagree with his policies, it means carrying someone else's personal brand as your identity every time you cross an international border. We've got to remember something here. Government documents derive their authority from their neutrality. The dollar bill works because it belongs to everyone. The passport works because it represents the country, not the president. When you collapse that distinction, you don't just change the document. Passport before you weaken it. Use this face. I know that's right. You weaken its credibility at home, and you weaken about what happens when that document, the one that represents 330 million Americans of every political persuasion, carries one man's face and one man's gold signature. It stops being a national document. It becomes a political statement. And for the millions of Americans who did not vote for this president or who disagree with his policies, it means carrying someone else's personal brand as your identity every time you cross an international border. We've got to remember something here. Government documents derive their authority.
They should give us an option if we want it or not.
The dollar bill works because it belongs to everyone. The passport works because it represents the country, not the president. When you collapse that distinction, you don't just change the document, you weaken it. You weaken its credibility at home, and you weaken it abroad. Senators have already written to the State Department urging them to halt this. Senator Gillibrand introduced the Humble Presidents Act. Multiple lawmakers have raised the same fundamental concern. There is a difference between commemoration and personalization, and that difference is not subtle. Now here's what I want people to see clearly, because this is the part that most of the coverage misses. The 250th anniversary of American independence is a genuinely important milestone. It deserves to be celebrated. But look at how it's being used. The passport, justified by the 250th. The gold coin, justified by the 250th. The currency signature, justified by the 250th. The park passes, justified by the 250th. The anniversary has become the vehicle for every single branding initiative. Because who's going to argue against celebrating America's birthday? That's the strategic logic, and it is more calculated than people give it credit for. But here's the part that should concern every American, regardless of party. Every one of these items extends the president's image far beyond his time in office. A passport issued on July 6, 2026 is valid until 2036. That currency will circulate for years. That gold coin will sit in display cases for decades. This is not about 2026. This is about permanence. The Blue Bill's analysis of how each of these items was timed against the anniversary calendar told you everything you needed to know about the sequencing. That's the kind of reporting that actually matters when the details are moving this fast.
Yeah.
But let me be clear about the principle.
But they giving him some super something.
Every president wants to be remembered. That's human.
Or if they would really tell us if when he really passed.
Is that you earn your legacy after you leave, through presidential libraries, through the judgment of history, through what your policies leave behind. You do not award yourself monuments while you are still sitting in the chair.
He has no ethic.
That is what other kinds of governments do. And we are not that kind of government. So where does this road lead? Let me walk you through it. First, the legal front. The Humble Presidents Act, H.R. 8388, introduced by Representative Raul Ruiz of California. The existing lawsuit over the national park passes. All of these signal that Congress is beginning to push back. But I'll be honest with you. With the current balance of power, legislative solutions face very steep odds. These bills are important as statements of principle, but getting them signed into law by the very president they're designed to constrain, that's a circle that does not close easily. Second, and this is where my experience in diplomacy tells me to pay close attention, the international perception. When foreign governments see a sitting president's face on a national travel document, they read it through their own lens. And in many countries around the world, that is a very specific signal about the kind of government you are. It is not a signal that strengthens America's democratic credibility. Third, and I think this is the most consequential piece of all, the precedent. If this president can put his face on a passport, what stops the next one and the one after that? The danger is not just what one administration does with it. The danger is what it normalizes for every administration that follows. And fourth, there's a procedural question that nobody has answered. What was the legal mechanism by which a sitting president's image was approved for inclusion in a passport? Who reviewed it? What formal process was followed? The State Department directs questions to themselves. The White House points back to the State Department. That kind of opacity in government is never a good sign. Let me leave you with this thought, because I think it matters. A passport is a promise. It is the United States of America telling you and telling the rest of the world that you belong to this country and that this country belongs to you. Not to a president, not to a party, not to a
Checking
brand.
up prices on everything, yeah.
To you. Now think about what's printed in the background of that passport rendering. It's the Declaration of Independence, the very document that started this whole experiment 250 years ago. And that document was not written to celebrate a king, it was written to escape one. The men who signed it didn't put their faces on it so they'd be remembered. They put their names on it knowing it could get them killed. That was the deal. Power serves the people, not the other way around. I believe the 250th anniversary is worth celebrating. Genuinely, deeply worth it. But the celebration should make every American feel like they own a piece of this country's story, not like they're carrying someone else's autograph in their back pocket. America has corrected course before. We did it after Watergate. We did it after the divisions of Vietnam. We have the institutions and we have the will to do it again. But it takes people who care enough to notice when something shifts. When a symbol that belongs to everyone quietly starts belonging to one person. And it takes the courage to say simply and clearly, that's not who we are. That little blue book is ours, all of ours, and it ought to stay that way.
Hold on, let's go here.
I couldn't believe.
Y'all please hit the like button. Hold on.
How much mucus came out of my lungs the first time I tried this. It felt like I could finally breathe again. You were probably told that when you get older, or...
Oh no, that's not what I want. Hold on. This is not what I was trying to hit. But I need y'all to hit the like button. Did I see this? People don't realize. Did I see this one? Hold on, y'all.
You know, I've been around politics long enough to know that elections come and elections go. People win, people lose. That's the deal. That's democracy. But every once in a while, something happens that stops you in your tracks. Not because of who won or who lost, but because of how the most powerful person in the country chose to respond to it. On the night of June 23, 2026, Congressman Dan Goldman lost his Democratic primary in New York's 10th Congressional District. Brad Lander, the former city controller, beat him decisively, 65-34. Now that's a significant result, and we'll talk about why it happened. But here's what caught my attention. Within hours, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, went on Truth Social and wrote, and I want you to hear the exact words, "Weak and pathetic, Congressman Dan Goldman just lost. Big." I guess people didn't like him illegally targeting President Trump. In any event, this jerk is finally gone. Now let me tell you something. When I was president, political opponents of mine lost races. Some of them had been real thorns in my side. But I never, not once, took to a public platform to call a sitting congressman weak, pathetic, and a jerk on the night of his defeat. And there's a reason for that. The presidency is not a scoreboard. It's a trust. And the story behind why Trump was celebrating, it goes back years to an impeachment, a sarcastic endorsement, and a rivalry that reveals exactly how our politics got to this place. Stick with me, because the details matter more than you might think. Now, to understand why the President of the United States is celebrating at 1 o'clock in the morning on Truth Social, you've got to understand who Dan Goldman is and where this story really starts. Dan Goldman was born in Washington, D.C. in 1976, heir to the Levi Strauss fortune, educated at Yale and Stanford Law. But what matters here isn't the money, it's the career. Goldman spent a decade as a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York under Preet Bharara. He went after Russian organized crime, Genovese mobsters, securities fraud, serious, dangerous work. Then, in early 2019, the House Intelligence Committee hired him as their lead counsel to investigate the President of the United States. And here's where it gets personal. Goldman ran the first impeachment inquiry against Donald Trump, the Ukraine matter, the phone call with President Zelensky, the pressure campaign to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. Goldman questioned the witnesses. He directed the strategy. He oversaw the 300-page report. And on December 18th, 2019, the House voted to impeach Trump on 2 charges: abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The Senate acquitted him on February 5th, 2020, 52-48. But here's the thing people forget. Goldman was the face of that prosecution. Millions of Americans watched him on live television, methodically laying out the case. And from that moment forward, Donald Trump never forgot his name. Goldman went from prosecutor to permanent target, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Because what Trump did next was not what anyone expected. Now here's where this story takes a turn that most people don't know about. In August of 2022, Goldman was running in the Democratic primary for New York's 10th District, a wide open seat, crowded field. And on the night of August 17th, Donald Trump went on Truth Social and wrote,
Hey, Jonathan.
and I'm quoting,
What's going on?
"It is my great honor to strongly endorse Dan Goldman." He called him honorable, fair, and highly intelligent. He said Goldman would be very compassionate and compromising to those within the Republican Party. Now look, if you read those words carefully, you see what's happening. That's not an endorsement. That's a hand grenade tossed into a Democratic primary. And it worked exactly as intended. Goldman's opponents, Yuleen New, Mondaire Jones, Joanne Simon, They pounced, treating the endorsement as though it were sincere. Suddenly, the debate wasn't about health care or housing. The word Trump was said 14 times at the very next debate. Goldman fired back that Trump was trying to meddle in this election. His campaign said the former president was living rent-free in Goldman's head, but the damage was done. The conversation had shifted. Goldman still won that primary with about 26% in that fractured field. And once he got to Congress, he became one of Trump's loudest critics, pushing for the Epstein files, demanding subpoenas for Bondi and Cash Patel, calling for the 25th Amendment, slamming the Iran deal. He never let up, and Trump never forgot. So when Goldman lost his primary on June 23rd, 2026, 65 to 34
he has dementia,
against
and Lord
Brad
knows
Lander.
what else. You ain't never
Trump
lied.
didn't just notice.
Lord,
He
heaven
celebrated.
knows what else.
And that tells you everything about how this rivalry was never about policy. It was personal.
Of course.
Let me tell you something about leadership. It's not enough to be right. You've got to be present. You've got to listen. And you've got to keep earning the trust of the people who sent you there. Nobody hands you a seat forever. I learned that the hard way more than once. Now, Dan Goldman did a lot of things right. He stood up during the impeachment when standing up wasn't easy. He went to Congress and pushed hard on the Epstein files, subpoenaing Pam Bondi and Cash Patel when his own party's leadership was cautious. He called for the 25th Amendment when the president's behavior during the Iran crisis alarmed even members of the military. That takes real courage. But here's the honest truth. Goldman's greatest vulnerability wasn't Donald Trump. It was his own district. New York's 10th is progressive, deeply so. And the war in Gaza reshaped the political landscape there in ways Goldman didn't fully reckon with. He refused to call.
Y'all, I need for y'all to hit the like button. I'm gonna have to shut it down.
He defended his AIPAC support. Just days before the election, a Brooklyn coffee shop
Can y'all hear me?
publicly banned
Maybe y'all
him.
can't hear me. Can y'all hear me? Are y'all able to hear with your good ear? Or y'all just gonna continue to play like y'all can't hear me and I'm gonna shut it down? Either way, it's gonna go down. Down, 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 down. I'm 2 hours and 14 minutes in and y'all playing dumb because I asked y'all to hit the like button. And y'all want to sit here and act foolish like I won't stop this shit. And okay? Yeah, you can hit that too. Smith, hit it while you on your way out, sap sucker. Get your ass up out of here. Yo, Smith, funky face Smith ass. Who want to go with old Smitty, smutty, musty Smith? Yeah, it don't matter to me. You can hit the like or you can hit the thumbs down. But you bet if you hit that thumbs down, you better get your monkey ass up out of here. Now I said get my like button up. I don't care how many people in here. I don't care how many of you leave. You tap that 3 dots, hit up or down. I don't give a damn. How about that? How about that? That's just how true to it I am. I don't give a shit. But my like button better go up. And if you take back likes, I'm finna shut it down. You better go play with your mama instead of thinking you finna play with Auntie Fee. Yeah. Can't be nice to some people. Can't be grown to kids. Take them back. Get out. Take them back and get out. Get your monkey ass up out of here.
Certain things in America.
That's why they feed y'all anything and y'all dumbasses believe it and run with it. I need the number of people in here to drop. Get your ass up out of here. And yeah, I'm checking the list twice. I'm gonna find out who naughty or nice. Woo wee, baby. I got things to do instead of sitting up in here playing with you.
Husband thinks I have a shopping problem, but I actually have a savings solution.
The 25th Amendment. Donald Trump went on Truth
I have
Social
bars,
and wrote,
naturally, Orleans.
and I'm quoting, "It is my great honor to strongly endorse Dan Goldman." He called him honorable, fair, and highly intelligent. He said Goldman would be very compassionate and compromising to those within the Republican Party. Now look, if you read those words carefully, you see what's happening. That's not an endorsement. That's a hand grenade tossed into a Democratic primary. And it worked exactly as intended. Goldman's opponents, Yuleen New, Mondaire Jones, Joanne Simon, they pounced, treating the endorsement as though it were sincere. Suddenly the debate wasn't about health care or housing. The word Trump was said 14 times at the very next debate. Goldman fired back that Trump was trying to meddle in this election. His campaign said the former president was living rent-free in Goldman's head, but the damage was done. The conversation had shifted. Goldman still won that primary with about 26% in that fractured field. And once he got to Congress, he became one of Trump's loudest critics, pushing for the Epstein files, demanding subpoenas for Bondi and Kash Patel, calling for the 25th Amendment, slamming the Iran deal. He never let up, and Trump never forgot. So when Goldman lost his primary on June 23, 2026, 65-34 against Brad Lander, Trump didn't just notice, he celebrated. And that tells you everything about how this rivalry was never about policy. It was personal. Let me tell you something about leadership. It's not enough to be right. You've got to be present. You've got to listen. And you've got to keep earning the trust of the people who sent you there. Nobody hands you a seat forever. I learned that the hard way more than once. Now, Dan Goldman did a lot of things right. He stood up during the impeachment when standing up wasn't easy. He went to Congress and pushed hard on the Epstein files, subpoenaing Pam Bondi and Kash Patel when his own party's leadership was cautious. He called for the 25th Amendment when the president's behavior during the Iran crisis alarmed even members of the military. That takes real courage. But here's the honest truth. Goldman's greatest vulnerability wasn't Donald Trump. It was his own district. New York's 10th is progressive, deeply so. And the war in Gaza reshaped the political landscape there in ways Goldman didn't fully reckon with. He refused to call what was happening a genocide. He defended his AIPAC support. Just days before the election, a Brooklyn coffee shop publicly banned him, calling him a genocide enabler. Whether you agree with that or not, when a neighborhood institution turns on you that publicly, it tells you something about the ground beneath your feet. Brad Lander understood that terrain. He had Mayor Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. He'd been arrested at an immigration court defending deportees. Goldman had Jeffries and Hochul and Labor, serious endorsements. But in a progressive primary, the energy wasn't with the establishment. And here's what matters most. Trump didn't beat Goldman. Goldman's district did. But Trump claimed the credit. And that's the real danger of this whole story. We'll get into why that matters next. We've got to remember something about Dan Goldman that goes beyond any single election. This was a man who personally prosecuted the case for impeaching a president and then served in the same Congress alongside allies of that very president. That's extraordinary. His presence in the House was a living reminder that accountability is possible, that you can hold the most powerful person in the world to account and still show up to work the next day. Now, with Goldman gone, that institutional memory takes a hit. Not because Brad Lander can't be effective, he may well be, but because of the message Donald Trump is sending by celebrating this outcome. The message is simple and it's chilling. If you come after me, I will outlast you. I will mock you on the way out, and I will claim your defeat as my victory. Here's the honest truth. That kind of message has consequences far beyond one congressional district. It discourages the next young prosecutor from stepping forward. It makes the next oversight council think twice. It tells the next public servant that there's a permanent political price for doing your constitutional duty. And that is corrosive to the very foundation of democratic accountability. Now, I also want to be fair about what happened inside the Democratic Party here. The progressive challenge to Goldman was driven largely by the war in Gaza and the role of AIPAC. Those are legitimate debates. Voters have every right to hold their representatives accountable on foreign policy. That's democracy working. But when a president can take your party's internal debates and claim them as personal trophies, something has gone wrong with the ecosystem. The accountability structures that are supposed to protect democracy are being turned into ammunition against it. And that should concern every American, regardless of party. Now look, I've been studying political strategy my entire adult life. I've seen hardball politics. I played hardball politics. When Newt Gingrich and I were going at it in the 90s, neither of us was shy about it. But here's the difference. When we were done fighting, we sat down and balanced the budget. We passed welfare reform. We disagreed fiercely, but we governed. The system worked because both sides understood that politics had to produce something for the people, not just victories for ourselves. What Trump has done with Dan Goldman follows a very different playbook, and I want you to see it clearly. Phase 1, identify your most visible critic, the man who prosecuted your impeachment. Phase 2, in 2022, throw a sarcastic endorsement into his Democratic primary to sow chaos and make Democrats fight each other about you instead of about their own ideas. Phase 3, spend years attacking him on Truth Social, through surrogates, whenever he makes news. Phase 4, and this is the part that should worry everyone. When he falls, for reasons that have nothing to do with you, claim the credit. Call him weak and pathetic. Say the people rejected him because of you. That is not governance. That is not leadership. That is scorekeeping, and it degrades everything it touches. I also want to say something to my fellow Democrats. When we lose people like Goldman through internal progressive challenges, we have to recognize that Trump will weaponize every single one of those losses. Not because progressives are wrong to challenge incumbents. That's how democracy works. But we have to be strategic about how we manage our debates when a president is standing at the window watching for every crack, ready to claim it as proof of his own dominance. And this is where things start to get really complicated for 2026 and beyond. Now let me look ahead, because this story doesn't end on election night. Let me walk through what I think is likely to unfold. First, Brad Lander will almost certainly win that general election in November. New York's 10th is one of the bluest districts in America. Goldman won his general in 2024 with 82%. Lander will bring progressive energy, real credibility on immigration, and he'll carry Mayor Mamdani's coalition into Congress. That could be a very good thing. We need representatives who fight hard against this administration's worst instincts. But here's my concern. Trump will continue to use the Goldman narrative as proof of his reach, evidence that anyone who takes him on gets destroyed eventually. That chilling message extends far beyond one district in Brooklyn. Every future prosecutor, every oversight council, every young lawyer thinking about stepping into public service, they'll remember how this chapter ended and how the president responded. Second, the progressive movement within our party is gaining real momentum. Mamdani's candidates swept 3 primaries that night.
Good.
That energy is genuine, and much of it is healthy, pushing us on healthcare, corporate power, immigration. But if it becomes a series of purity tests that shrink our tent rather than expand it, we'll hand the 2028 election to whoever the Republicans nominate. We've got to remember, the question isn't whether Democrats can win their own primaries. It's whether we can win the country. And that requires the kind of coalition building that holds room for disagreement without demanding total conformity. I spent 8 years in the White House learning that lesson. It's the hardest thing in politics, keeping people together
who don't
still agree
here?
On everything.
Are y'all still rocking with me, or do I need to shut it down? Because I don't see no movement since Monty said I'm both. Are we still here? Truth is what we looking for. Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. But are y'all still here? Are y'all still listening? Are y'all still tapping in? My likes ain't went up. My cash app ain't went off. Ain't nobody in here moving, talking, nothing. What we doing? What we doing? What we doing? What we doing? Trump vows to revitalize Americans' faith. Oh, boy, please. You could never. Y'all, what we doing? We still here, what we doing? Only person here is Naturally Nolans and Cynthia. Oh. I'm new. Hi. Here to listen. Screw Trump. He's worthless. Shout out to Jessica. We like that.
But who share a commitment to making this country. work. This chapter ended and how the president responded. Second, the progressive movement within our party is gaining real momentum. Mamdani's candidates swept 3 primaries that night. That energy is genuine, and much of it is healthy, pushing us on healthcare, corporate power, immigration. But if it becomes a series of purity tests that shrink our tent rather than expand it, we'll hand the 2028 election to whoever the Republicans nominate. We've got to remember, the question isn't whether Democrats can win their own primaries. It's whether we can win the country. And that requires the kind of coalition building that holds room for disagreement without demanding total conformity. I spent 8 years in the White House learning that lesson. It's the hardest thing in politics, keeping people together who don't agree on everything, but who share a commitment to making this country work. That's the test ahead. Let me close with this. I've been thinking about something I've carried with me since my years in the White House. American democracy was designed for disagreement. The founders knew we'd argue about taxes, about wars, about who should lead. They built a system strong enough to hold all of that tension. But they did not build it for vendettas. They did not build it so that a president could use the highest office in the land as a personal scoreboard. When I sat behind that desk in the Oval Office, I learned something that stays with me to this day. The presidency is not measured by how many enemies you outlast. It's measured by how many lives you improve. The moment any president, Democrat or Republican, uses their platform to call a sitting congressman weak, pathetic, and a jerk on the night of his defeat, the office itself is diminished. Not the person who lost, the office. Now, Dan Goldman's service was imperfect. Whose isn't? But it was genuine. He stood up when it counted. And I want to welcome Brad Lander to the fight, because the work of holding power accountable doesn't stop. It just passes to new hands. And to the president, I'll say this gently, but I'll say it clearly. History does not remember presidents for their scoreboards. It remembers them for their stewardship, for what they built, not what they tore down, for the people they lifted, not the rivals they mocked. And to all of you watching, don't let anyone convince you that democracy is a game with winners and losers. It's a responsibility we all share. Every vote, every act of service, every moment of civic courage. The moment we forget that, we've already lost something no election can ever give back. Thank you for listening. Take care of each other out there.
I'm trying to get caught up. Y'all playing with me on my likes. I'm being too nice. I'm being too nice.
Real fermented pickles. It's
Scoreboard.
fresh cucumbers.
Or his own bank account. Ripping us off every turn. Absolutely. Lining his pockets. Getting prepared to escape.
I want you to picture something with me for a moment. There's an 11-year-old girl in Bahrain. She's not in a war zone. She's not near a military installation. She's in a residential neighborhood close to an international airport, and she gets hit by debris because Iran decided to fire missiles at a country that wasn't even fighting this war. Bahrain didn't declare war on anybody. Kuwait didn't declare war on anybody. These are nations that opened their doors to American forces because they believed hosting those forces would make them safer. And now their apartment buildings have holes in them. Their airspace is getting shut down in the middle of the night. Their citizens are running for shelter. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because what I'm about to walk you through over the next few minutes is not a partisan argument. This is about what happens when the most powerful military on the planet operates without a strategy that accounts for what comes next. A piece in the Blue Bill actually laid out how structurally fragile this ceasefire architecture was from the very beginning, how the agreement had no mechanism to absorb exactly this kind of escalation. And what we're watching right now is that analysis playing out in real time. When the consequences of your military decisions start landing on the doorsteps of the nations that trusted you, you're not managing a conflict anymore. You are manufacturing a regional catastrophe. And we'll come back to why that distinction matters in a moment. Let me tell you something. To understand what happened this week, you've got to understand what brought us here. Because this didn't start on Thursday. On February 28th of this year, the United States and Israel launched nearly 900 strikes on Iran in 12 hours. They took out air defenses, missile infrastructure, military command centers, and they killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Now, whatever you think about the Iranian regime, and I've got no love for that regime, let me tell you, when you decapitate a government, you better have a plan for what fills the vacuum. Iran responded the way anyone who studied the region would have predicted. They launched hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel, at Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and the Kurdistan region of Iraq. That is 7 Arab nations that were not party to this conflict suddenly ducking for cover. Then came the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply moves through that waterway. Iran effectively choked it shut. Global energy prices spiked. Food prices climbed well beyond the Middle East. A ceasefire came on April 8th. A memorandum of understanding was signed on June 19th. The strait started cautiously reopening. And for about 5 days, it looked like maybe the adults had gotten back in the room. I negotiated in that region for 8 years. I know how thin the ice is, even on a good day. And here's the honest truth. This was never a good day. It was just a quiet one. And quiet is not the same as stable. Now here's where things get very specific. Because what happened between Thursday and Sunday morning is a case study in how fast a fragile peace can shatter when nobody's built a structure to hold it together. Thursday, June 26th, an Iranian drone strikes the Ever Lovely, a Singapore-flagged cargo ship near the Strait of Hormuz. It hits the starboard side, damages the bridge, no casualties, but the message is clear. Friday, U.S. Central Command retaliates. American aircraft hit Iranian missile storage facilities, drone depots, and coastal radar sites around the strait. President Trump goes on Truth Social and calls it a foolish violation of the ceasefire. He does not address the nation. he does not brief Congress. Saturday morning, Iran launches another drone, this time at the MT Kiku, a Panama-flagged oil tanker. Saturday evening, the United States launches a second wave of strikes. 10 Iranian military targets, communication systems, air defense sites, surveillance infrastructure, mine layer capabilities. Saturday night into Sunday, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps fires ballistic missiles and drones at American military bases in Kuwait and Bahrain. A residential building near the Bahrain International Airport is hit. Kuwait intercepts 2 ballistic missiles, and the IRGC Navy issues a statement promising that American bases will experience hell in the coming days. Each side treats the other's retaliation as a ceasefire violation. Each response triggers the next. And this is where things start to get complicated, because there is no mechanism in the agreement itself to break this cycle. No de-escalation channel, no third-party arbitration trigger, nothing. We've got to remember something. There is a way to handle a moment like this, and
Hey,
there's a way
Pamela.
not to.
He
When
talking
I
about
ordered strikes on Iraq in 1998,
the swamp
Operation Desert
monster.
Fox, I went before the American people.
Soft, fresh, and hot right out of Europe.
Swamp monster.
And at home, this is a signature soft pretzel from the Pretzel Company. Here.
I explained the legal basis. I defined the military objectives. I set limits. I told the country what we were doing, why we were doing it, and what we would not do. That is what presidential leadership looks like in a crisis. What we got this week was a Truth Social post at 11 o'clock at night that said, and I want you to hear this carefully, there may come a point when we are no longer able to be reasonable and will be forced to militarily complete the job that we very successfully started. If that happens, the Islamic Republic of Iran will no longer exist. Now let that sit. The President of the United States just threatened to erase a nation of 88 million people from existence in
Isn't that
a
horrible?
social media post.
Sad.
No address from the Oval Office, no joint statement with allies, no consultation with Congress. When reporters asked him in the Oval Office whether the ceasefire was still intact, he said of Iran, they're a little bit different, and then had the press removed from the room. Vice President Vance told Iran to pick up the phone. That is not diplomacy. That is not strategy. That is improvisation. And you do not improvise with nuclear threshold powers and the global oil supply. Here's the honest truth about what worries me most, and it's not the missiles. It's the precedent. The House of Representatives passed a war powers resolution to limit the president's authority to continue this conflict without congressional approval. The Senate passed it too, with 4 Republicans breaking ranks: Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, Rand Paul, and Bill Cassidy. And here's what the president did in response. He sent Congress a formal notification declaring that hostilities with Iran had been terminated.
Emerald.
He cited the April ceasefire
Hey, Johnny.
and said there had been no exchange of fire since then. He sent that notification while the United States was actively maintaining a naval blockade of Iranian ports, while American aircraft were striking Iranian military targets, while U.S. Central Command was issuing operational updates on active combat sorties. The argument was that blockades and airstrikes do not constitute hostilities. Now, I've been in that building. I understand the tension between executive authority and congressional oversight. But redefining the English language to avoid the War Powers Act is not a gray area. It is an institutional violation. The Blue Bill ran an analysis on how this particular bypass creates a precedent that fundamentally weakens congressional war authority, not just for this president, but for every president who comes after him. And that should concern every American, regardless of party, because the Constitution does not grant war powers to one person. It grants them to the people's representatives. Once you let a president argue that active bombing campaigns aren't hostilities, you have surrendered something you will never get back. Let me tell you something that I don't think enough people are focusing on. When Iran fired those missiles at Kuwait and Bahrain this weekend, it wasn't aiming at enemies. It was aiming at countries that host American forces.
Wow.
Kuwait has a major U.S. Army base. Bahrain is home to the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet. These nations made strategic agreements with the United States based on a simple premise that American presence would enhance their security, not make them targets. And now look at what's happened. An 8-story residential building in Bahrain has its top floor blown apart. Kuwait is intercepting ballistic missiles over its own capital. And what did the Gulf states say? Qatar called for restraint from all sides. Jordan condemned Iran, but also urged de-escalation. Those are not statements of unqualified support for Washington. Those are statements from allies who are trying to figure out whether this partnership is still worth the risk. The Blue Bill covered the diplomatic language coming out of the Gulf this week and identified the pattern clearly. These governments are hedging. They are recalculating. And if you have spent any time in that part of the world, you know that when Gulf states start hedging publicly, the private conversations are far more alarming.
My mom is 63 years old, and this is how she looks so young for her age. You only need 4 ingredients. Lemons are packed with vitamin.
If hosting American forces makes a country less safe than not hosting them, the entire U.S. force posture in the Middle East collapses. No number of airstrikes compensates for that. That is a generational strategic loss. Now I want to be honest with you about where this goes, because there are really 3 roads ahead, and I wish I could tell you one of them was good. The first is what one analyst called a limbo state of no war and no peace. The ceasefire technically survives, but it means nothing. Periodic strikes continue. The strait stays partially open, but dangerous. Oil prices stay elevated. Shipping companies charge risk premiums.
But they're still shooting,
Food
bombing.
costs climb worldwide, and the conflict becomes frozen with no resolution mechanism and no political will to build one. That is the most likely outcome as of today. The second road is full escalation. Iran follows through on its threat to completely close the Strait of Hormuz. The president follows through on his threat to militarily complete the job. Hezbollah opens a full second front from Lebanon, where Israel is already occupying large sections of the south, and where over 4,000 people have been killed since March. Regional allies get drawn in, and the United States finds itself in the largest military engagement since the 2003 invasion of Iraq, except this time without a coalition, without congressional authorization, and without a defined objective. The third road is genuine diplomacy. The Switzerland talks produce a framework. Iran's nuclear material gets addressed. The Strait reopens fully. Lebanon gets folded into a regional settlement. Sanctions relief begins. But that road requires something that every single escalation cycle systematically destroys, and that is trust. Every drone that hits a cargo ship, every midnight airstrike announced on social media, every residential building that takes shrapnel in Bahrain makes that third road narrower. We've been here before, not in the specifics, but in the pattern. A president who believes that military dominance alone produces outcomes. Allies who smile publicly and plan privately for a future without us. A Congress that passes resolutions nobody enforces. And an American public that's told everything is under control, while the people on the ground tell a very different story. I did not always get it right. No president does.
But don't nobody get it this off either.
The most consequential decisions I made in 8 years were the ones where I chose restraint, where I absorbed the criticism for not acting rather than acting without thinking. I'm not calling for pacifism. I've never been a pacifist. I'm calling for strategy. I'm calling for a president who will stand before the American people and explain what we're doing in the Middle East, why we're doing it, what winning looks like, and what we're willing to pay to get there. I'm calling for a commander-in-chief who briefs Congress before the bombs drop, not after, who calls allied capitals before posting on social media, who understands that the greatest threat to American security is not an Iranian drone. It is the erosion of the institutions and processes that are supposed to ensure our military power is used wisely. Those institutions still exist. Elections still exist. Congressional oversight still exists. Public pressure still works, but only if people choose to use them. And that choice, that responsibility, that is not mine anymore. It's yours. And I believe, I truly believe, that America still has the capacity to get this right. But the window is not open forever. And the cost of waiting gets higher every single day.
The U.S. Supreme Court handed down some closely watched decisions today, including one concerning how states like California count mail-in ballots after Election Day. The High Court upheld the Mississippi law that allows officials to count mail-in ballots postmarked by Election Day that arrive later. The decision keeps voting procedures in place in several states, including here in California. Justices also declined President Trump's request to review civil judgment requiring him to pay writer E. Jean Carroll $5 million in a defamation lawsuit. In a 6-3 decision, the court also ruled that Trump can fire heads of independent agencies without cause. The ruling overturns a 90-year-old decision and is a major expansion of presidential authority.
This has been going on for almost 100 years. They've been waiting for this.
Good tea. I got
All
a
those
little.
agencies
Hold
were
on.
designed by Congress to be outside the president's control.
Yeah, let me see. Here, the bottom of the swamp. Did I do that one? Hold on. He forgot. Let me see.
You know, there are certain things in American life that belong to everybody.
Did I go with this one or I stopped? Hold on.
Your social security number, your birth certificate, and your passport. That little blue book
Okay, yeah, we
is the
talked
most
about this.
personal document.
Hold on. We talked about the passport already. Hold on. Hold on.
Photographer yesterday. Also, Donald Trump is spiraling in the Oval Office as Iran has made it clear it is not having any meetings with the United States in the next 24 to 48 hours. Donald Trump, in order to manipulate the markets, claimed earlier in the day that Iran has called. They want to do a meeting. And this followed Barack
Did we hear
Donald
this one
Trump's
today?
personal stenographer yesterday also posting the United States said it had productive conversations with Iran after the United States struck Iran twice, and things are going super well, is what Ravid said yesterday. I'll tell you what he said earlier in the day as well. But Trump posted, Iran has requested a meeting. It will take place tomorrow in Doha. And then you had Barack Ravid post update. Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will depart today for Doha, where they will meet on Tuesday with the Prime Minister of Qatar and additional senior officials to discuss talks with Iran. Just pause there. Do you know what's missing from that sentence? Iran. There's no mention of Iran. So we're sending Kushner and Witkoff to speak to mediators in Doha, and Iran's not showing up, but the way Ravid tried to post it or write about it, and other senior officials, not of Iran, of Qatar, of other countries. On Wednesday, the technical teams of the United States and Iran are expected to hold separate meetings with the mediators from Qatar and Pakistan, according to a senior White House official. And notice there, it doesn't say they're meeting together. It says the technical teams are expected to hold separate meetings. Do you see the writing to make it seem like there's meetings taking place, but there's actually no meetings taking place?
That's it.
Here's what Iran's foreign minister said. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson has said the following. No talks are currently scheduled for the coming days. In the coming days, there will be no negotiations and no meetings at any level with the United States. They made it very, very clear. Yet on News Nation, another outlet that Donald Trump goes to I think, spread a lot of this propaganda, they write, a diplomat with knowledge of the talks tells me that tomorrow, Tuesday, Witkoff and Kushner will meet in Doha with the Qatari Prime Minister and other officials in order to discuss negotiations with Iran. The following day, technical teams from both the U.S. and Iran will meet separately with Qatari and Pakistani mediators. Iran says that ain't happening. But Trump manipulated the markets. They were up significantly today. Had there been those strikes by the United States before the markets closed on Friday, you would have seen the market absolutely tank. This is unadulterated market manipulation, folks. Isn't it just so obvious what is happening? So what's Donald Trump saying? You know, he's got to move on. He's got to do the WMD, weapon of mass distraction. So Donald Trump goes to the reflecting pool, which suffered great damage due to the vandals and radical left scum that hate our country, has been for the past 2 days in full operation. He talks about a 350-foot gash from the sharp knives by these vandals, but everything is perfect, and if anyone attacks them, they will get 10 years for attacking it in jail. If you attack the reflecting pool with a knife, you're going to get 10 years.
Oh
So
my
anyway,
God.
Donald Trump
With a knife.
goes into the Oval Office, and people are like, you want to talk about this? Like, no. Okay, what do you want to talk about, Donald? I want to talk about the Save America Act, which is his voting suppression act. Okay, what about the housing bill? Okay, you want to talk about are you going to sign the housing bill, Donald? The housing affordability bill, which was passed on a bipartisan basis? Then Donald Trump's like, it's a big yawn. It's a housing affordability. It's a big yawn. Watch what Trump says. Let's play it.
Meet Final Draft Cloud, the new online version of the world's #1 selling screenwriting software. Use
100, 300, 400, 500%. You know that.
But will you sign that housing bill?
I have not. It hasn't been sent to me yet. It's coming. I understand, and then I'll make a difference. Here's what I would like to say. Much more than a bill. That big deal. It's a yawn. Some people say it's wonderful.
It's a yawn.
Compared to the Save America Act, just about everything is a big yawn.
Okay, so a reporter says, all right, Donald, New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani said that he's open to being the poster child for socialist candidates because he's delivering for the American people, and regardless of what label you want to give him, shouldn't we care about the results? To which Donald Trump says he's a communist. And the biggest threats to this country, bigger than World War I, World War II, and 9/11, are these communists like Mamdani. And that is the biggest threat. I mean, just think about how dangerous the rhetoric from this psychopath is. Here, play this clip.
They really topped everything by a lot today, yeah.
Zoran Mamdani said in an interview this week that he was open to being the poster child for socialist candidates. Are you worried about more socialist candidates across the United States?
I think it's a big threat to our nation, actually. Because it's not socialism, it's really communism. They use the word social democrat because it sounds so nice, but it's really communism you're talking about. I think it's the biggest threat to our nation there is, maybe since our founding. That includes World War I, World War II, September 11th. It includes the Pearl Harbor attack. I think this is the biggest threat to our nation. People will smile when I say that, but the smart people are going to say, you know, he's probably right. It's basically introducing communism into the United States of America. There's never been anything so dangerous.
Then Donald Trump is asked, so what are your plans? Do you have a plan for the housing bill?
No.
And Trump's like, look. No one knows housing like me. I got very rich off of no one knows housing like me. And by the way, one of the reasons why Donald Trump does not support the housing bill, in addition to the fact that it's not his idea and has his name on it, is because he views housing as a zero-sum game, and that if you help first-time homeowners or others who can't afford, Trump's view is you're taking housing away from him and his private equity buds. That's how he feels about it. Listen to what he has to say. Play this clip.
What are your plans for the housing bill, Mr. President?
I don't know. I think it's so unimportant by compared to the Save America Act. I think the Save America Act is exactly what it says. It's saving America.
Affordable housing, he don't care nothing about that.
And the housing bill
just long as he can stay in office.
They worked on it long and hard. It's very
because that's the whole point.
That means the Democrats like
in the Epstein file.
I think it's maybe even It's probably maybe more that way they're getting things that I wouldn't necessarily agree to. Nobody knows more than housing in the history of the presidency. Nobody did well like me in housing. I made a lot of money. I made a lot of money with housing. But when I look at that bill, it's a bill. But when I look at the Save America Act, it's about saving America. And
No, it's about saving you from the Epstein files.
That's probably not going to happen because we have 4 Republican senators, maybe 5, that just won't vote for it. It's crazy. Somebody, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. Nobody's done more for Alaska than me.
Oh,
She's
God.
Trump deranged. What can I tell you?
Isn't it notable that just a few days back, Caroline Leavitt, Donald Trump's press secretary propagandist, said, tomorrow at 12 p.m. on Capitol Hill, Trump will sign into law the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, one of the most significant pieces of housing affordability legislation in American history. This bipartisan bill includes policies long championed by the president. It cuts necessary red tape, helps increase housing supply, and limits the ability of large institutional investors to purchase single-family homes. As the president has said, homes should be owned by American families, not large corporations. President Trump promised to lower housing costs, and he is delivering, making it easier for every family to achieve the American dream of homeownership. Tomorrow's historic bill signing is another promises kept. Now, Trump on the housing bill, big deal, big yawn. And hey, Donald, you're done with the market manipulation. Now you want to trash housing affordability. I want to bring in Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren to talk about that housing bill. Let's bring in Senator Warren. I have a lot more questions I want to ask her as well. Senator, so great to see you. You know, so many Americans, I think, were like, wow, bipartisanship. We have Senator Warren and Senator Scott, completely opposite ends of the so-called political spectrum or whatever, but we've done a housing bill. Private equity can be limited in scooping up these homes, especially from first-time homeowners. This is going to be great. And I said, okay, I'm going to do a story this morning that says, great work, Donald Trump, housing bill, affordability, great work, Senate. I was going to do that story. And then the guy doesn't show up, blows it up, turns it about himself. And I go, what? No, it's so predictable, yet so unfortunate that that's the system that we're in. Talk to us about it from your perspective.
So first of all, let me just set the stage for you. You know, we've worked on this thing for a year and a half because we are in a housing crisis. Prices are too high. They're too high for home buyers. They're too high for renters. The average age of the first-time home buyer in America now is 40 years old because of how high housing prices are. So what has Congress done for 35 years? They say, damn, price of housing's gone up. And that's it. That's been how the United States Congress has responded. So started putting people together and saying, put an idea in the box here that would help lower the cost of building new housing, or renovating existing housing. And somebody pitched in something about how you could smooth out some environmental regulations. Cool. What else you got? And somebody else pitched in something that said, you know what? There's this requirement on manufactured housing. You have to have a chassis in it. You take that requirement out and it becomes $10,000 cheaper to build one. Cool. I got together with Senator Kennedy to do something we call carrots and sticks. Federal government gives a lot of money to cities all around America every year. And basically we said, we don't care how you do it, but if you're building more housing, you get more of that money. And if you're not building housing, you get less of that money, right? I had an innovation fund that said, if you'll really go in on ways to lower the cost of building, we, the federal government, will be a good partner and put up money to help buy you an elementary school or, you know, something sexy like new sewage treatment plant, you know, the things you need when you're building more. So we put all those together. There are nearly 50 of them. And then we have the private equity piece to keep private equity boxed out of residential housing. We get this bill that passes the Senate, final passage last Monday. We could go right now tonight. passes the Senate 85-5, passes the House on Tuesday night, woohoo, by I think an even bigger margin. Then it's Wednesday morning, and Donald Trump has announced the night before he's coming over to Congress because he's going to have lunch with the Senate Republicans. And while he's here, he's going to sign the bill. So they lay out the red carpet, and I mean that literally. They build the stage, they put the flags up on the stage, they have the fancy desk and the chair, and all the Republicans are out there. Man, they're tweeting like crazy about, I'm getting my thing in the bill. And my view is good. Success has many mothers. Let it happen. I think this is great. Democrats are tweeting about it too. And then 2 hours ahead of time, Donald Trump says, I'm not going to do it.
Hey, Carol.
Not going to sign it. So he hasn't vetoed it, hasn't signed it. So that brings us up to now. And what he says now is that it just doesn't matter. So we got all these ways to lower costs on the price of housing. And Donald Trump just doesn't care. And he openly says so. The guy who ran for president saying, I will lower costs on day one. Remember that? Ran for a year, said, I will lower costs on day one. That is the guy who now, we're on day 500 and whatever, cost of groceries is up, cost of gasoline is up, cost of utilities is up, cost of healthcare is up, and the cost of housing is up. We've got a bill here that could help bring down one of those costs. And he says he just doesn't care. Not he's mad, not there's something bad in it. He just doesn't care. I really am stunned.
You know, when I hear him, though, and yeah, he says that, but some of the other stuff he seems to say, though, to me is equally telling, where he seems to view housing, like so many things, as a zero-sum game, and that if you're going to be giving housing to new homeowners and helping people get housing, that in his mind, that's taking it away from him and his people and his crew. And so it actually seems in a way to me that his bluff got called on housing. Like we've seen a lot now in this Epstein files, it reaches its conclusion. You see that he was the cabal. He was the cover-up to begin with. He hates the JCPOA, but never had an healthcare. He never had a plan. And so you take this to its logical conclusion, and he actually seems that doesn't want housing.
This AI tool will take your idea and create a complete book, complete with design, images, layout, everything, including the content, literally in a few minutes. Watch this. So I'm using Designer, which will import content from your blog, from a Google Doc, or a Word doc, or even a YouTube, depending on the plan you choose. For now, I'm going to use WordGenie, the AI feature. So all I need to do is give it an idea, and then click on Next. And then just tell WordGenie what audience am I targeting my book towards. Then it'll just show me a selection of titles, which I'll just choose one that catches my eye. Then it'll suggest the outline for my book, which I'm free to edit as I see fit. And now the magic happens. It will generate the full content of the ebook ready for to edit, tweak and tune, and obviously I want to make it my own so it comes across and reads really well. So from here now it's saved as a draft, or I can simply choose a template. There are hundreds of templates to choose from, and all of these are totally customizable. You can change anything, the images, the style, any of the text, whatever you want. So this one looks perfect for my niche, passion, grit and success. All these images can be changed once I'm in the editor, and I can do worksheets, I can do all sorts within this template. So now you can see all my content from my draft has been pulled into this template, and all the content's been laid out into single column, double column, images have been put in the right place. But of course I can now customize and change anything. So if I don't like a chapter heading page, perhaps that image doesn't work for me, I can search my inbuilt image search tool and just select another image, and it will just load it just like that.
doesn't want housing. Like, to me, it's even deep, and now they're trying to say, well, it was because we want Save America, which is the Voter Suppression Act. But it actually seems his intentions are revealed that he actually doesn't want new housing because he views that as a harm to his rich friends.
It's really interesting how you would draw that connection, because look at what happened. Why are all those costs that I was just talking about up? Right? It's not gravity. It's not, like, oh, that's just how two molecules react when they bump into each other. It's policies that he followed. It's his tariff policies have driven up costs. His energy policies have driven up costs. Lordy, his healthcare policies have driven costs through the roof for millions of Americans. And his bombing halfway around the world and closing the Strait of Hormuz has driven up costs. All of his policies have pushed costs up. And as you say, here is the one time, I hadn't thought about it the way you describe it. We actually call his bluff and say, here's a way you could bring down costs, but it's bringing down costs for working people. It's getting more apartments built. It's getting more manufactured housing built, which is often the most affordable. It's getting access to more single-family homes. And Trump, I guess, is not seeing a big profit opportunity for the Trump family or for his close-in buddies. And all I can say is I sure hope we keep talking about this, because Donald Trump has forfeited any right to say that he cares about the economic circumstances of hardworking American families. He's proven he doesn't.
Right. I mean, if you even look at the horrific, catastrophic consequences of this unlawful war in Iran, I mean, we even see this past weekend what seemed to be more and more market manipulation yet again. 405, 410, markets close, we bomb Iran. And I could just predict, it's so bizarre to be able to predict these things, and you go, okay, all right, on Sunday, once the futures markets are about to open, I bet you, I say this on my show, we'll get a post. I know the guy who's even going to do it. Like, it's so obvious. I go, Barack Ravid from Axios, he's going to post, we're made very good, productive talks, and that things are going to go great. And boom, an hour before the futures market, there they go. There's the Pope. And Iran's like, we don't even know what you're talking about, but okay. And then the market reacts to it. And, it goes from what could have been a horrible, market. The American people aren't benefiting from this. But then it's all of a sudden, boom, it's green. And it's just like people see it now and they're like, what are you even doing? What is this?
Right. But the part that keeps going forward is the Trump corruption. Just make no mistake. He has time and attention to do two things. One is to keep these pieces going where, he's cutting another deal, and it just turns out his sons will make millions of dollars off it, right? He sends his son-in-law to the Middle East to negotiate peace, and while he's there, he's going to sell his deals for a sovereign wealth fund, right? He's going to buddy up with the Qataris while they give him his $400 million jet. His crypto, right? A place to do bribery right out where anybody can see it. So all of that continues, right, on one axis. And the other axis is he spends his time on the details of his gold-encrusted ballroom, his triumphal arch, his reflecting pool. Those are the two things. Use the presidency to just grift, just to make as much money personally as he can, plus use it for vanity projects, things that he thinks are going to reflect well on him. And the American people, folks who have fallen behind again this year since Donald Trump has been president, families have fallen further and further behind. Inflation is up. Cost of all those goods is up. And like I said, Donald Trump just doesn't care. It's about making money for himself and his buddies, and it's about flattering Donald Trump's ego. And those are it seems to me, the only two things he cares about anymore.
And before we go, one of the things that I used to respect about the Senate is the seriousness with which work was approached. And you may have a different approach than, say, a Republican senator, but you weren't running Enron or Bernie Madoff's enterprise as a, who was in leadership. I mean, it was, here are the right numbers, here's our approach, here's their approach, can we reach compromise? That's at least what I grew up with, what I thought. Now, what it seems is the United States Senate, when it's controlled by Republicans, is like Enron in its last days, or like the Madoff, and it is literally cooking the books and using fake numbers that aren't real. $21 trillion is completely fake. It's not, outrageously fake numbers. And then when you are conducting these hearings and cross-examining the different nominees and people in Trump's orbit, and you're asking them very basic questions. What is inflation currently? Is that more or is that less than, Madam Senator, I'm just asking is more. Now here's wage growth. Is it more or is it less than wage growth? Well, can you answer the question? And so the idea that this whole thing, I think in the American people see it, and you cross-examine these Trump witnesses and expose it on a weekly basis, that's it's like Bernie Madoff, it's like a Trump organization being run by your Republican colleagues.
Yeah.
We promise a tenfold refund if it doesn't work. Traditional dentures can lead to jawbone loss and alter your facial contour over time, but this denture completely avoids such issues. It can be fitted in just 1 second and is suitable for everyone. Whether you have a full set of teeth, are partially edentulous, or completely toothless, there's no need for adhesives, dentists, or appointments. Simply soak it in hot water to activate the elastic material, bite down to fit it to your unique oral shape, and you'll have new dentures in just minutes. My friends all say they look so realistic, just like dental implants. This product addresses tooth loss and looseness at the root, solving issues like sensitivity and chewing difficulties. Made from soft silicone, it's suitable for any oral condition, extremely durable, and has no foreign body sensation, with international standard certification. No more spending big money at dental clinics for dentures. We also promise a full refund if it doesn't perform like real teeth. They won't rub or slip, providing a secure and natural wearing experience, allowing you to eat whatever you want. I can speak clearly and smile without any worries. I've been wearing them for several months, and they still feel like new. They look even better than the dentures my dentist made, and I installed them myself at home. Say goodbye to expensive orthodontic treatments and dental implants. This invisible dental appliance solves all your problems. You can eat freely with no restrictions. Confidently show off your charming soft silicone dentures. They fit perfectly to any tooth shape with no pain or discomfort, allowing you to express emotions naturally. Long-term wear can gradually improve the dental arch structure, correcting and coordinating tooth alignment. It also helps reduce snoring and relieves tension. Made from antibacterial silicone, it can last for decades with normal use. Even if you skip cleaning for a month, it won't yellow, discolor, or develop unpleasant odors. If you're not satisfied upon receiving the product, you can request a refund at any time. Missing or yellow teeth make you afraid to smile. Can't chew food properly or speak clearly? It fits your teeth perfectly in just 1 second, easily solving all dental problems. I've been using these dentures for over 10 years without any damage, and they still work great. Whether the food is sweet, sour, bitter, or spicy, it won't cause tooth pain. Suitable for all ages. Purchase now to enjoy the lowest price. Made from antibacterial silicone, they're easy to clean. Even if you don't clean them for a month, they won't develop any odor. As experts with over 30 years of denture research, we're offering a special promotion for the first 80 customers. Not only a 50% discount, but also...
On this kind of thing, I've gotten to where I do. I just ask the most basic facts. These aren't things like, well, there's a Democratic view of this and a Republican view of it. I really was the one you're talking about here. I'm asking the guy who wants to be the head of the Council of Economic Advisors. And do you know what the statute actually says? The job of this person is to give the President of the United States independent economic advice. Make sure that the President knows what reality is. So I start him with the most basic question. What's inflation running at today? And you know, it's right there. You can see it. It's right there. You can see it. We had just gotten the reports from the federal government. It's there. And blah, blah. The guy cannot give an answer. So I give him the answer. And is that higher or lower than it was when Donald Trump was sworn in? Can't give an answer. I give him the answer. So he said higher or lower. It's like pulling teeth. And the importance of that is this means that one of the people whose legal responsibility is to sit near the president and say, Mr. President, I know you want to do this thing, but we've got a problem over here. And here's what the problem looks like. This is a guy who cannot even answer a basic factual question. I think that disqualifies him for this job. And I am deeply, deeply worried about the fact that that's exactly who Donald Trump picks to be his economic advisor. I think of it as just insulating Donald Trump from reality. That's what he wants. And he'll pull it off as long as the Republicans let him get away with it.
That's true.
Well, you gonna let him get away with it, or what?
Absolutely. I agree. I may have a couple of more.
Well, I mean, just talk very briefly before we go about what this looks like differently if Democrats take it.
Oh, come on. Midterms.
Oh, I see
If
somebody
Democrats
got.
take
Oh, that's the
control,
same guy.
some things
Y'all, I
change
need for y'all to
dramatically.
hit the like
First
button.
thing is that we are the ones who become the chairs of the committee, and we are the ones who run the two chambers. That means we bring things to a vote that we want to bring to a vote. That means that we conduct investigations that we want to conduct. That means we get subpoenas to get people in to answer questions. And that is huge. The second part, if we can get a majority in the House and the Senate, please, if we can do that, it means we can actually start passing some laws that are good for the American people. We can undo some of the terrible stuff that's
I have no idea what's going on.
To stop.
Where is she at? Come on back, lady. I'm spinning, y'all. It's my system. Are y'all buffing? Are y'all buffing too? Can y'all hear me? Are y'all buffing?
Photographer yesterday also posting, the United States said it had
questions.
He hiding evidence. Oh, Lord.
So normally where a serious criminal offense takes place in normal times in our country, you would have the Department of Justice, which would be an independent body. It would go to a grand jury.
It would get a true bill. It would indict an individual. It would be sealed temporarily. Eventually, it would be unsealed. The public would get to read allegations. Usually, if it was a high-profile case, there could be a press conference while maintaining a criminal defendant's presumption of innocence. But you lay out, you show evidence, you show specifics, and then a court proceeding takes place. Ultimately, you get a jury verdict, and the Department of Justice in the past would go through that process. They had a presumption of regularity that our federal courts gave them, and you would go through a process, and that's what would take place. Was the process slow? Was the process messy? Sure, sometimes, but that was the way the process goes. In a banana republic, in a Trump regime where the rule of law doesn't exist, you have a crazy authoritarian psycho, Donald Trump, who goes out there with this bizarre entity that's now the DOJ, this dangerous, lawless entity. And you got regime media, state regime media, Fox, and there will be whatever fits the authoritarian's narrative, as crazy as it goes. Donald Trump is obviously utterly embarrassed, for example, by the reflecting pool, and that everybody could have predicted that because
my daughter's birthday is coming up, and she is begging for these Gucci sunglasses, but they are $400 retail.
Oh, yeah.
It gets its water source from the Potomac, where there's algae, and because algae is a thing, it's alive, it spreads, it reproduces, it's hard to get rid of, and it would likely return unless you change the water source, and painting the bottom of the reflecting pool blue was not going to change the problems with the algae and what the reflecting pool had previously seen, and now it's come back way worse. But the same way Donald Trump lies about the 2020 election and everything to him is a conspiracy and a lie, he says there were vandals who came into the reflecting pool, they took a knife, they cut 350 feet in the middle, and this is what's actually done it, and they also threw in fertilizer into the reflecting pool, and that's what spread the algae. Could you believe it? It was all going to be perfect until this was going to happen.
That's why he's calling them vandals.
A press release that says radical lunatics deface America's reflecting pool, and President Trump was right again. This is a real press release from the White House. From the White House. And I know we know that they have zero credibility at this point. Just when you read stuff like this, you're like, this is what the White House is writing. I don't know how any adult or grown-up or just any human being can look at this and go, oh, this is how I want my White House to behave. They go, crazed and deranged lunatics have once again exposed their hatred for America with a cowardly and deliberate attack on one of our nation's most iconic landmarks. The newly renovated...
I don't want to hear that.
Something happened in the last few hours that the major networks still haven't figured out how to explain to you. Right now, producers in news studios across the country are waiting for a talking point, waiting for someone in Washington to tell them what language is safe to use. I'm not going to wait for that, and I'm not going to wait for permission. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, why it happened, and where this goes next before the spin starts. Iran fired ballistic missiles directly at Tel Aviv. Read that again, because the wording matters more than almost anything else in this story.
Y'all hit the like button.
Not a proxy, not Hezbollah lobbing rockets out of southern Lebanon, not a drone swarm.
Hit the like button. Tap the 3 dots at the top right corner. I'm waiting. I'm waiting for y'all to get the likes up. Double tap the face of your phone or hit the 3 dots at the top right corner. Can y'all hear me? Are y'all buffing? What we doing?
Launched from Yemen by the Houthis. Iran, the Islamic Republic itself, launching ballistic missiles at an Israeli city. That is what analysts call a threshold event. And something happened in the last few hours that the major networks still haven't figured out how to explain to you. Right now, producers in news studios across the country are waiting for a talking point, waiting for someone in Washington to tell them what language is safe to use. I'm not going to wait for that, and I'm not going to wait for permission. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, why it happened, and where this goes next before the spin starts. Iran fired ballistic missiles directly at Tel Aviv. Read that again, because the wording matters more than almost anything else in this story. Not a proxy, not Hezbollah lobbing rockets out of southern Lebanon, not a drone swarm launched from Yemen by the Houthis. Iran, the Islamic Republic itself, launching ballistic missiles at an Israeli city. That is what analysts call a threshold event. And a threshold event means exactly what it sounds like. A line existed. That line has now been crossed, and there is no walking it back. I need you to understand something before we go one sentence further. This is not an episode. This is not another flare-up that the news cycle swallows and forgets in a week. What happened in the last several hours is the kind of moment that ends up in history textbooks. The kind of moment where 10 years from now, people will point to this exact week and say that's when everything shifted. So let's not rush through it.
You're using cinnamon wrong, and your blood sugar is paying the price. Let me explain. This isn't your typical herbal book. It's issues. Flip to the gut section. You'll find ginger plus peppermint tea. Boil, sip, and watch the bloat ease off in minutes. Blood circulation, page after page of real answers, like beetroot blended with ginger and lemon to relax your blood vessels naturally. Inflammation and joint pain? Forget those lab-made synthetic things. This shows you turmeric plus black pepper, golden milk that works while you sleep. Poor sleep? Chamomile paired with lemon balm. Brewed right, it can calm your nerves and help you drift off without a fight. Low energy? Spinach and lemon juice, where vitamin C unlocks spinach's hidden iron. Suddenly, your healthy green actually fuels your day. But here's the kicker. Most herb books just throw random names at you. No doses, no combos, no science. That's why most people quit. This manual, spiral bound, full color, organized by problem, not plant. Everything backed by tradition and modern studies. And instead of 50% off, right now they're giving 75% off plus free shipping automatically at checkout. You even get 2 free bonus guides. And if you're still skeptical, there's a 60-day money-back guarantee. Use it, try the remedies, and if it's not life-changing, send it back. 0 risk. So no, you really shouldn't buy this book, unless you're finally ready to solve the issues everyone's been Googling for years, right from your own kitchen. Click below while the clearance deal is still live.
Mine came in like 4 or 5 days, and honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it's way nicer than I thought. It's spiral bound, so it actually stays open when you're using it in the kitchen, and the pages are full color with big fonts, which I love because I hate squinting at tiny text. I get it, there are a lot of herbal books out there, but this one is actually organized by health issues, tells you what to use and how. It's not overwhelming at all. And just so you know, it's not a PDF or download. It's a real book that ships out quickly. Plus, they have a 60-day money-back guarantee. So if it's not for you, no pressure. I'd say grab it while it's still discounted. It's become my go-to on the counter.
When I started Walton Goggins goggle glasses, I needed a website. Figuring out how to make one was pretty hard on the old noggin. But with GoDaddy Aero, I can just tell it what I want. And it uses AI to make a website so fast it pretty much blows my noggin. This is working with a beautiful design that'll blow my customers' noggins, which allowed me to focus my noggin on making more goggins to put on their noggins, which were just metaphorically blown. Look like you know what you're doing at GoDaddy.com.
Let's actually slow down and build the picture piece by piece, because if you only catch the headline, none of this will make sense. And that's exactly how the real story slips past most people. Here's the context you need first. For nearly 2 years, the Middle East has been climbing what I describe as a controlled escalation ladder. Everyone moving up a rung at a time, and nobody willing to be the one who reaches the top. Iran ran its network of proxies. Hezbollah did what Hezbollah does. The Houthis hit shipping lanes in the Red Sea. Meanwhile, Israel was conducting operations in Gaza, in Lebanon, and, this is the detail most coverage glosses over, inside Iranian territory itself. Strikes on Iranian soil, strikes on Iranian military infrastructure. The kind of strikes that if any other nation on earth had carried them out against a rival, the world would have called an open act of war without a second of hesitation. And for a long time, Iran absorbed it, responded through proxies, kept its nuclear program simmering as a deterrent card, stayed just below the line of direct confrontation. That calculation just ended. So ask the question every serious analyst is asking right now. Why now? Because timing like this is never an accident. Let me translate that into plain language. Launching ballistic missiles isn't something you do on a whim. It requires targeting data, launch preparation, and a sign-off from the highest levels of government. This was not a reflex. This was a deliberate, calculated decision made by people who understood exactly what they were choosing. So what actually changed? A few things, and I want to walk through them honestly, because the real picture is messier than any headline will give you. First, Israel's campaign inside Iran has been intensifying. Strikes on missile production sites, on military infrastructure, on senior figures inside the Revolutionary Guard. At some point, sustained pressure like that produces a response. There is a limit to how many blows a government can absorb before the internal political cost becomes unmanageable. Iran's leadership is surrounded by hardliners, by a Revolutionary Guard pushing for retaliation, and by a domestic population that, whatever you think of the regime, still carries national pride. That internal pressure is something Western analysis consistently underestimates. Second, and stay with me here, because this part is actually rational even though it's unsettling. There's a deterrence logic at work. Iran has watched what happened to other regional powers that gave up their weapons programs or tried to accommodate the West. They watched Iraq. They watched Libya, and they drew one specific lesson from both. In this neighborhood, the only thing that protects you is the credible threat of force. If your military capacity keeps getting degraded, at some point you have to demonstrate that continuing to hit you carries a real cost. That demonstration is exactly what just happened. Third, and this is the part some people don't want to hear, there's an American dimension here that can't be ignored. The United States has maintained what amounts to strategic ambiguity, backed by enormous firepower. Carrier strike groups in the Eastern Mediterranean, assets across the Gulf, bases spread through the region, and depending on the moment, Washington has either actively backed Israeli operations or quietly looked away while they happened. Iran's missile launch is also a message aimed at Washington. The message is simple. Your support has a cost. Your bases are in range. Your assets are in range. And if this escalates, that cost becomes real. Is that a bluff? Let me translate the honest assessment circulating in classified briefings right now. It's probably not a bluff. Not entirely. Iran has spent 2 decades building a missile program specifically engineered to threaten American and Israeli assets. The Shahab series, the Imad, the Khorramshahr. These aren't crude weapons. They're accurate, and they can reach almost anywhere in the region. We've already seen the proof of concept. In 2020, after the killing of Qasem Soleimani, Iranian missiles struck Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq directly, causing traumatic brain injuries among American service members that were initially downplayed before the full scale became public. When Iran says it has the capability to escalate further, the honest answer is, believe them. Now look at Israel's side of this equation, because the position they're in is genuinely difficult. They cannot absorb a ballistic missile strike on Tel Aviv and simply do nothing. That's not politically survivable, and it's not strategically survivable either. The public will demand a response, and the government, regardless of its composition, will be under enormous pressure to deliver one. But here's the trap. What does a response look like that doesn't ignite a regional war? Strike hard, and Hezbollah's full arsenal in the north could activate. The Houthis intensify. Iran could move toward the Strait of Hormuz, and that single move would trigger a global energy shock that makes 2022's oil spike look mild by comparison. Strike too softly, and Israel risks looking weak. And in this region, perceived weakness is an invitation, not a deterrent. There is no clean option here. Anyone telling you there's a simple play that carries no risk does not understand what they're describing. Let's talk about America's actual role in this moment, because this matters more than most coverage admits. Diplomatic channels are working overtime right now. Back-channel communications with Tehran through intermediaries. Intense conversations through the embassy in Israel. The Pentagon running war game scenarios. Intelligence agencies in crisis mode, trying to map Iranian intent and capability. And here's the real question worth sitting with. Is the answer to every crisis really more demonstrated force? That argument gets made constantly in Washington, and it has been applied constantly over the last 2 decades, and it hasn't always worked. It didn't deliver clean outcomes in Iraq. didn't in Afghanistan, it didn't in Libya. Military superiority does not automatically translate into the political outcome you actually wanted, and that miscalculation has cost this country enormously. That doesn't mean force is never the right tool. It means the question that actually matters is, what is the political objective? And is military action the instrument most likely to achieve it? Because right now, the most dangerous outcome on the table is a general Middle East war that pulls the United States in directly. Iran is not Iraq in 2003. This is a nation of 88 million people with a military structure deeply rooted in the region's geography, capable of making any direct conflict extraordinarily long and extraordinarily expensive. That doesn't mean Iran is invincible. It means the cost of direct confrontation is so high that every other option needs to be exhausted first. And right now, that exhaustion point hasn't been reached. Here's something barely getting airtime in the coverage you're probably seeing. This isn't just an Israel-Iran story. Saudi Arabia is watching every move. Remember the China-brokered normalization between Riyadh and Tehran? Diplomatic relations restored after years of hostility. Now this happens. Does Saudi Arabia sit on the sidelines? Quietly share intelligence with old partners? Push for de-escalation publicly? Riyadh is not a passive actor in this story, whatever the headlines suggest. Then there's Turkey. Erdogan has spent years playing a genuinely skillful game of strategic ambiguity, a NATO member with active relationships across Iran, Russia, and Hamas simultaneously. He's positioned himself as a possible mediator, and there's a real case that Turkey is one of the only actors with credible relationships on every side of this conflict. Russia is watching with far more than passive interest. The military relationship between Moscow and Tehran has deepened significantly. Iranian drones flowing to Russia for use in Ukraine, in exchange for capabilities flowing back the other way. That means this crisis has direct echoes in Ukraine, in European security, in the broader great power competition defining this entire era. These theaters are not separate. They're connected by the same supply lines. And China is watching just as closely. Beijing's economic interests in the Middle East are enormous, dependent on Gulf oil, tied to a long-term cooperation agreement with Iran. China's preference is almost always stability, because its economic model runs on uninterrupted supply chains. But Beijing also has an interest in watching the United States get pulled into yet another costly, draining regional commitment. So the Chinese calculus here is genuinely split down the middle. Now here's the single most important point in this entire breakdown, so don't let it slide past you. Wars in this region have a documented habit of expanding far beyond what any single participant intended. The First World War is the textbook case. Nobody in 1914 wanted the war that actually happened. Every government involved was making what it believed were careful, rational calculations. And those calculations still produced a catastrophe none of them saw coming. Once an escalation mechanism starts moving, it's extraordinarily hard to stop, because every actor is reacting to what just happened, trying to signal strength, trying to avoid looking weak. And that signaling pushes the next actor to respond in kind. That's how a spiral starts. And right now, there's no obvious natural stopping point in sight. No moment where both sides can look at each other and agree they've each made their point. Those windows exist, but they close fast, and the runway for diplomacy to actually work is not unlimited. So here's what actually matters over the next 48 to 72 hours, and these are the exact signals worth tracking. Watch the Israeli Security Cabinet. Are the hawkish voices winning the internal argument, which could mean strikes inside Iranian territory within hours? Or are the more cautious voices holding the line, buying time for diplomacy? Watch the Strait of Hormuz, the single choke point through which roughly a fifth of the entire world's oil supply moves. Any sign of mining, naval harassment, or open threats to that strait triggers an immediate global market reaction and forces Washington into a decision about military intervention to keep it open. Watch Hezbollah's full arsenal, estimated in the hundreds of thousands of rockets, because full activation means Israel suddenly fighting a two-front war, and that changes the entire military equation. Watch American force posture, additional carrier groups, additional air assets moving into the region signal exactly how Washington is preparing to respond. And watch the quiet diplomatic back channels, Qatari and Omani intermediaries, unexpected trips by European foreign ministers. Those channels staying active is a genuine signal of hope. Those channels going silent is a warning. Here's the most likely path forward based on the structural incentives every actor is facing right now. Israel will respond, that's close to a certainty, because the political and strategic pressure to do so is simply too strong to absorb in silence. The real variable is scope.
Watch what alcohol does to stuck poop.
If your belly blows up like a balloon every time you eat, you have what doctors call a poop trap. It's where 15 pounds of poop is stuck in your body right now. But when you do this for 7 seconds, it all comes out.
This is the quickest way to clear out stuck poop.
Look at this. Everyone knows the colon has twists and turns, right? But what nobody talks about is this specific bend right here. Doctors call this the splenic flexure, but I call it the K-bend. It's the sharpest turn in your colon and exactly where poop gets stuck for millions of people. Here's what nobody tells you. This isn't just another curve. According to the Cleveland Clinic, this sharp bend is one of the most common places where waste and gas gets trapped, leading to bloating, pressure, and constipation for people everywhere. Watch what happens. When poop hits this K-bend, it has to make a hard turn. And unlike the other curves in your colon, this one acts like a speed bump that brings everything to a halt. The longer poop sits in this K-bend, the more water is absorbed from it, making it harder and drier, so it gets even more stuck. See, poop is like cement. As long as it keeps moving, it stays soft. But when it gets trapped at the K-bend, it hardens fast. And when 5, 10, even 15 pounds of waste backs up behind this blockage, your belly has nowhere to go but out. That's why you're bloated even though you barely ate, because your K-bend can't soften and push through the hardened poop on its own. And here's the worst part. Fiber makes it worse by adding more bulk to the traffic jam. Laxatives only push liquid around the blockage. Nothing actually gets your colon moving again at the K-bend. And the longer you wait, the worse it gets, especially as you get older. That's because your colon's muscles slow down as you age. That K-bend that might not have given you trouble when you were younger, it's now trapping more and more waste. Meanwhile, all that backed up waste makes you feel bloated, exhausted, and like you're carrying around extra weight. So what actually works? New York's top gastroenterologist, Dr. Gina Sam, discovered a simple 7-second morning ritual that finally solves the K-bend problem. First, it softens hardened waste right at this critical junction, then restores your colon's natural wave-like motion to push everything through the K-bend, so you can clear up to 15 pounds of stuck poop and finally create complete, satisfying eliminations every morning. The result? Flat belly instead of that bloated, backed up feeling. Dr. Sam has made a short video where she'll show you exactly how to use this 7-second ritual from the comfort of your own home. Click below now to see exactly how to clear your K-bend in just 7 seconds a day. It's just a quick video that shows you exactly what to do. You won't have to put in your email or anything like that. Hey, don't let another day pass while you're backed up and uncomfortable. And don't let this hidden K-bend keep you dependent on laxatives, embarrassed by gas, and too uncomfortable to enjoy life. Click below now to discover the 7-second solution that's already helped thousands of people finally clear their K-bend and feel light and empty.
Okay. Y'all have a good night. Oh, no, hold on. It's still on. It's a commercial.
Okay, guys, let's talk about collagen and heart function.
What?
So if you're new here, you don't...
If Israel can confine its response to military and IRGC targets, visible enough to satisfy domestic political pressure, but calibrated enough to avoid forcing Iran into a corner, there is a narrow path through this that doesn't spiral. That narrow path requires intense, simultaneous American diplomacy, reassuring Israel of full support while sending Tehran an unmistakable signal about the cost of further escalation. That's an extraordinarily difficult balancing act,
hold on.
and it requires
I need
a
for
level
y'all to
of
hit the
sustained,
like
skilled
button.
attention
Stop.
that Washington hasn't.
Double tap the face of your phone right now. Double tap. Double tap the face of your phone or hit those 3 dots at the top right corner.
Always managed to maintain. If Israel's retaliation stays limited and Iran feels it has made its point, demonstrated both willingness and capability, there's a real possibility, not a guarantee, that Tehran chooses to pause rather than push further. Iranian leadership, for all its rhetoric, is not suicidal. Regime survival is the single overriding priority, and a full-scale war threatens that survival directly. But here's the scenario that keeps analysts up at night. If Israeli strikes hit Iranian civilian infrastructure, if there are significant civilian casualties on Iranian soil, the internal political pressure on Iran's leadership becomes nearly impossible to contain. And that's the moment where rational calculation can break down entirely, because leaders on every side eventually get pushed by their own populations into decisions they know carry enormous risk. That is exactly how wars nobody intended become wars nobody can stop. Before we close, I want to say something that I think gets lost every single time a story like this gets reduced to maps and missile ranges. The people actually living through this, Israeli, Iranian, Lebanese, Palestinian, did not choose any of this. Every missile that lands somewhere lands on someone's morning. Families who woke up thinking about ordinary things, work, school, what to make for dinner, and are now living inside a transformed reality. That fact does not cancel out the strategic analysis, but it should never disappear underneath it either. The only goal actually worth having here is finding a path that reduces the killing and creates room for something more stable. That requires resisting the urge to flatten this into a story where one side is purely righteous and the other purely villainous. Real conflicts almost never sort that cleanly, and pretending otherwise in either direction only makes them harder to resolve. So here's your assignment before the next video. I've given you 5 things to track over the next several days: the Israeli cabinet, the Strait of Hormuz, Hezbollah's arsenal, American troop movements, and the diplomatic back channels. But I deliberately left one actor out of that list, a country sitting quietly in the corner of this entire story whose next move could matter just as much as anything happening in Tehran or Tel Aviv. Drop in the comments which country you think that is, and tell me why their silence right now is actually a decision, not an absence. The most dangerous point in any escalation cycle isn't the opening shot, it's the middle zone, where both sides have gone too far to back down without losing face, but haven't yet gone far enough to be forced into real talks. That's exactly where we are right now. Stay sharp, keep watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Staying on top of all your credit card benefits shouldn't feel
Okay, y'all have a good one.